Hold on, let me. Oh, there it is. Okay. Did you reach out to Sam? Do you have a line to Sam? Sam Cedar?
Oh, Sam Cedar.
Yeah.
I have Majority Report follows me on Twitter, so maybe I can message that account. And I think I have a line to the producer. That would be sick. I would love to talk to
Matt
Sam Cedar.
Leck.
Yeah, I don't know if he follows me, but I think he knows who I am because I saw the Do you see you did see this? They reacted to our conversation with Miller.
They mostly reacted to Tim, but I think
Matt Leck dude is AIDS cancer. Ugh.
Why?
I think they went into.
I don't know. He's like he's the curly black haired white dude, right? I feel like he's like a commie loser dude. Is my impression of him. Ugh.
With a set of expectations about us that were not well founded, it seems.
Yeah. Like, what did they say? They were like, Hutch is bought into something or something.
Oh no. Well, they called me an anti-Hasan streamer, which is like, okay, fair. But like they were
true. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would say I'm not primarily an anti-Hasan streamer, but you know, it's an accurate descriptor. But they teed up with.
I wouldn't even say. I think I don't know. Fuck me. When they say anti-Hasan streamer, they don't just mean this guy. Oh wait, I was thinking of Matt Binder. Oh, I don't know who the other guy is then. When they say anti-Hasan streamer, they just mean that you reflexively hate every single thing that Hasan does without thought. That's what they mean to imply when they say that. I don't know who this Matt Lech guy is, or if I've seen it before, I just don't remember. Oh wait, no.
Why do you think?
Oh no, I don't know this. Sorry, go ahead.
Why do you think they mean to imply that?
Because it delegitimizes your criticism and it makes it so that they never have to confront anything. Notice that like the norm for politics today is you never actually. They don't have there's no debate or argument over literally any substantive topic anymore, ever. It's all just ad homs and attacks on people to characterize or mischaracterize their entire political disposition so that you never have to address any arguments. That's it.
So I guess to push back on that, it's like, when you just, what did you say? You said like, you're an anti-Hasan streamer means that you just like hate everything about him?
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
You reflexively disagree with him, not for any logical reason, but just because of,
but I guess like, my issue is that makes you sound like an insane person because you're not saying like, here is the proof behind that they think this.
You don't need to.
But why?
Because it's team sports.
Okay.
That's how it works.
All right.
Tim said, and Sam was like, Tim said something that I don't think they were really hoping he would say, but I think all of us agreed with like everything Tim said. Yeah.
I didn't like that one. Like, I definitely agree with what Tim said. I don't think that you disagree with what Tim said. And I don't think that you even disagree with what like people like Ezra Klein have said. I don't think that your position is cancel Hasan.
Like even with what they're referencing here, it sounds like Tim Miller was saying some things that were critical of the Democratic Party, and the Majority Report are super horny for any disagreement with the Democratic Party. And because these guys are anti-Hasan, that must mean that they're on like the pro-Democratic Party team, which means they're on the pro-Zionist team, which means they're on the pro-capitalist, pro-billionaire team. So if Tim says something good, then they must not like it because Tim is representing the right team and they're on the wrong team. That's what it sounds like that Majority Report comment was basically saying. And then Pisco has no political savvy, so he doesn't understand. And then I don't know about Hutch. If Hutch realizes sometimes how deranged these people are. I think Hutch does realize, but
everything Tim said, yeah.
I didn't like that one. Like, I definitely agree with what Tim said. I don't think that you disagree with what Tim said. And I don't think that you even disagree with what like people like Ezra Klein have said. I don't think that your position is cancel Hasan. What's this group that said that was like, is it Third Way?
Third Way.
Yeah. I don't think that you are fully bought in on that either. And so I'm not sure that you were like devastated by what Tim Miller had to say. I don't think that that's accurate.
No, you know me. I'm a very I would say I'm a pragmatist above like everything. And so from a pragmatic perspective, the way that the Third Way was going about trying to attack Hasan, I think was counter to their goals. I think when they attack him over anti-Semitism stuff, and especially when they do like a lot of those clips, I think for Hasan are just very damning. But I do think there's like a fair amount of them that are very clearly missing context that very fundamentally changes the things that he's saying. And so when you use out of context clips, and
which ones? I wish he would say which ones.
The clips.
Yeah, he said. I feel like Hutch just said like Hasan gets clipped out of context a lot, and when you actually listen to what he's saying, it changes it. If you watch the whole thing.
Sure, I mean there are some things
doesn't happen often.
Well, there are some things that it depends on who's going after him. So, so I've talked about the whole media apparatus. So one of the things I've said is the only people, there are sometimes there are subgroups that have this like media apparatus thing figured out, but they're subgroups, so they don't have as big of a voice. Jews are very good at this. They tend to like represent their interests pretty well. Everybody kind of can see easily what anti-Semitism is. So it feels like a lot of the attacks, I don't know if that Third Way or Third Voice or whatever the fuck that organization is, I don't know if it's a Jewish one, but like a lot of the attacks against Hasan will be focused on like anti-Semitic things he said. And then just sometimes the things that they pick, in my opinion, they're just not the best. Like they kind of actually are like out of context, because there are a few. So like for instance, but then you can push harder to make it more fair, but it's just the clip itself isn't good. So when Hasan says like, I don't care how many rapes there were on October 7th, like this is actually something that is somewhat explainable. What the point that Hasan was making there was, I don't care how many rapes there were on October 7th, it doesn't justify genocide, which is that's true. That's technically a true point. So you could argue that that's like an out of context clip. Or like the America deserved 9/11 thing sounds like you want civilians to die. That's like not necessarily what he was saying there. But like, if you push further into any of these topics, you can get to more problematic stuff. So like Hasan doesn't think that any widespread rape happened on October 7th. He thinks all those stories are fabricated. He thinks maybe 1 or 2 people got raped, but that was like an isolated example. It's not a systematic policy like it is in Israel against Palestinian prisoners. Or when it comes to the 9/11 thing, like he'll, like if you push harder on it, he might blame American civilians. I don't know. Fuck it. Well, no, he wouldn't. Not the because it's the class thing. He would blame the billionaire class or whatever the fuck else for it. But yeah, sometimes these examples get wheeled out, and there are just so many better ways. There was it wasn't a Wall Street Journal article, I think. It might have been an Atlantic article that went a lot deeper into Hasan's stuff. And it was like, this is like really bad. This is really problematic. This is not good. And they were focusing more on the ideology. Whereas like Ezra Klein was like, well, Hasan has said a lot of good and, some bad things and some good things. And they're all just like little snippets and they don't really accurately reflect the depth of how crazy Hasan's ideology is. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I misheard him. I thought he said a lot, but apparently he said a some, which is small.
Attack him for being an anti-Semite. And when you
he's
sort of bastardize his arguments about, like when you make his anti-Israel arguments about anti-Semitism, I think you're just helping him. And so, as someone who wants Hasan to have less influence and someone who wants like more people to become aware of what he's really about, then I think that was a really bad way of going about it.
Destiny, this is bugging me. I need to know your answer. Would you be surprised to find that between Hasan and Asmongold, your fans tend to watch Asmongold over Hasan? Why do you think that would be? The other day, Asmongold mentioned he has a lot of Destiny viewers. I believe that because I was watching him at the time he said it. Okay. I think it has to do with the like the demeanor or disposition of a person. So like I think my fans would be much more likely probably to watch Asmongold just because of the style that he delivers his content in. I think my fans would also be a lot more likely to watch Vosh over Hasan as well, just because Vosh and Asmongold and me have more similar styles of communicating versus Hasan. Hasan is very, 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 very ideological and rhetorical. Whereas Vosh is a little bit more factually based. Asmongold will deal more factually based, unfortunately. And then obviously I'm the research god, so
Hasan is fucking dry.
Yeah,
too.
Hasan is like
it's hell to watch that shit, man.
Like give me any fucking like clip of a thing.
President Trump trumps a bombshell. Project Freedom will be stopped. Agreement or war? Where are we heading? Trump suspended the operation in Hormuz, and in Iran, they celebrated victory and declared that the United States have failed. The president of the United States...
Iran is kicking America's ass so much, and this is because Western imperialists aren't actually able to fight Iran because they constantly propagandize their own military, and they think that they're so good militarily, but they're not. And it's actually amazing to see the Ayatollah and the rest of the world finally rise up against American imperialism, and it's a joke that Israel has managed to lead America into yet another... Like, you can, like, print every single statement Hasan is going to make, and I don't think my fans as much, or the people that watch my style of content, are going to watch that kind of stuff as much. That's just not what they would consume. Whereas somebody like Asmongold, who's, like, watching clips and directly...
He says crazy shit.
He says crazy shit, but he's more directly engaging with everything. Or Vosh, who's like more directly engaging with everything. It's just so different. Hasan is just so empty with everything that he says. He's so empty and shallow and hollow with everything he says. Ugh, yeah.
So everything Tim said, I agreed with. Yeah.
It's kind of like a weird catch-22 for a lot of the people who are anti-Hasan and who want just like something to be done, which I'm always like questioning what is the thing to be done. But one thing that I think that you're correct about is that, like, for example, this effort to use Congress to pass a resolution to like officially censure or go after Hasan. I think that you would probably, I don't know this to be your opinion, but I think that you'd probably be against it for the simple fact that it would be like the thing that you could most.
It was two people, right? It was Hasan and Tucker Carlson, I think, right?
Nope, Candace Owens.
Oh, was it Candace Owens? Okay.
Hasan would most want, right? Like that would give him like a influence and credibility more than he could ever muster by himself.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry,
Not
respond to
to
that.
anyone with meaningful impact. This would give him credibility maybe to his audience, but like I think the average person who would then see like, oh, Hasan got denounced by both sides of Congress. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, maybe it depends. I do think Hasan would like these kinds of attacks. Like he wants, like, anytime I'm getting attacked a lot by mainstream conservatives, Hasan gets very jealous of that, and he'll talk a lot more about me in those time periods because he feels like the mainstream attacks do legitimize him more, but he wants them to be safe attacks. He doesn't want to actually have like anybody come for his platform or his money or anything. So like I think a censure from Congress is probably about one of the best things he could hope for because it's pretty toothless.
I'm surprised. That's pretty. I feel like the average person, if they hear like so and so got censured by Congress, that's a crazy thing. That doesn't happen often.
Yeah, but he doesn't care about the average person. He's in the tanky far left crowd, and for those people at all, like it boosts his standing.
I mean, yeah, but he's only playing to his audience. Then I mean, he's captured them all. I would assume.
Yeah, but he's like kind of slowly hoping that political ideology grows because he is only capable of appealing to because he's part of that team. He doesn't try to branch out as much. He has been a little bit more lately, but I mean, Hasan could have been on a billion podcasts, and he chooses not to because he's too scared to venture outside too much. Yeah.
Congress have no credibility right now with the voters, and so
Right. Yeah.
if they're making that case against him, I think it's likely to make him more popular. Like especially coming from Congress, doing that kind of a thing is, very likely to backfire.
Which is why I like often wonder like what's the so what to a lot of these discussions. I mean, I spent all this time just trying to get clarity on the prescription in these different venues, whether it's Taylor Lorenz or whether it's Hasan Piker or whether it's any of these other cavalcade or cast of villains. What is it that should be being done that's not being done? And that always to me, so for example, like someone said in the chat, why even talk to Taylor? She's just like inherently dishonest, and so why even have her on? I'm like, well, first of all, even people who are being incredibly evasive, which I thought that she was being very evasive of a lot of your questions. Listen, I agree with a lot of what you have to say about Chorus. Can have useful things to say in other contexts, or the exposure of some evasiveness or some underlying lack of sense can be valuable to an audience, or the conversation can be fun. So like, I don't understand the prescription sometimes to like not engage. I don't hear you to be doing that. But yeah, you can back to that.
Well, we can talk about Taylor in a minute, but when you say when it's specifically about the Hasan thing, when you say, well, what is to be done? I think it's important to establish what is the problem that we're even talking about. So, so like that is obviously you need to establish that before you even touch like what is to be done. Agree. And so from my perspective, the problem is, as I see it, is that...
Wait, did that censorship of Hasan actually go through Congress? Did they pass that, or did they just propose it?
Yeah, I don't think it's been passed. I think it's been proposed.
That would be kind of crazy. Like, how does Twitch decide who they ban based on news? Like, if Twitch has an anti-hate speech policy, and then Hasan gets censured in Congress over being anti-Semitic... But then why did they ban David?
Well...
Did he break a TOS on stream or something?
Probably not, but he also hasn't even been found guilty, so...
Yeah.
Hasan, to his credit, and I am genuinely giving him credit for this, has done a really phenomenal job of raising his profile with the public in the last, especially year and a half, 2 years. I don't know if he has a team helping him or if he's doing that all on his own, but...
He's bigger than he's ever been, and he's more relevant than he's ever been.
He's been very him and his team have been very savvy about like getting his name out there. And so just neutrally, from a neutral perspective, he's just been really impressive at doing that. The issue that I have, or the problem that I identify, is that I don't think that Hasan is being truthful about like what his larger project is. And so that to me is the problem. Like, it's not so much that he's gaining more influence, it's that I think he is being deceptive about it. And so then when I look at that problem, the solution for me is that to educate more people about what he is really about, and then empower them to come
to their own conclusions, to take that into consideration when they're thinking about potential leaders and what content they consume. I
mean more for like our fellow content people that do collaborations with him. Like I want to see more, interlocutors with Hasan that are actually prepared to have a conversation with him in a way that confronts his actual agenda. So that's like my solution to that problem. I definitely don't want to. My goal is not to deplatform him, get him banned off Twitch. That's like Dan Saltman does that kind of stuff, but that's his thing, and That's not what I'm doing. I don't think that that's realistic. That's not going to happen. You're not going
I
to
saw somewhere that he had an article on the Free Press. This is Barry Weiss's outfit that I think was purchased by millions of dollars from by CBS or something before they made her the head of that network. And
was it for the Free Press? It's about the Michigan race.
Is hate speech not protected speech? Yes, hate speech. There is no such thing as like hate speech in the United States in terms of like a legal category of like criminal conduct. I believe hateful stuff can be a aggravating factor for crime. So like you can't be arrested for being racist, but if you're racist as part of committing a crime, that can be an aggravating factor that can boost your punishment. But but being censured in Congress is basically just Congress saying like, hey, you've done a bad, no good, and then it's like a finger wagging thing. Like
there's not like a permanent record.
Yeah, there's not like a criminal charge or anything crazy like that. Yeah.
Question: I'm having a hard time with people being like, oh, Dan got published in the Free Press. It's Barry Weiss's rag. Blah blah blah. I don't really see a problem with him getting published in that website. Do you have any opinions on this?
I don't know. I haven't read his article, so I don't have like a strong opinion on it right now. It is a lot of these things are very difficult questions. Like I've seen a lot of people attacking Hasan that are making decent attacks, but I don't want to associate with these people. Like I think early on, I think I retweeted, there was some like RNC research account or whatever that I thought made a good attack against Hasan, but I didn't realize like that the account was like a crazy unhinged conservative account. I think I unretweeted it. It can be difficult figuring out, I guess, where you want, who you want to cast your lot in it with at the end of the day, but yeah, I don't know.
Sure, if his article was, I guess, like insane or crazy or whatever, I would maybe have a problem with it. But his article was, for the most part, like very normal, if not very just center of the road. So if you're posting your thing on a more right-wing type site, I would think that would be pulling people from the right more closer to the center and getting your ideas out there.
I mean, like, it's possible. I would have to see. I would have to actually like look at the article, I guess. But there's a few ways that manifests. Like it could be that you are ideally pulling some people towards your end, maybe depending on what they let you talk about. It could also be that you're legitimizing the site a bit, but I don't think Dan is a big enough figure to like where nobody's heard of this website and now Dan's posted there, now everybody's heard of it. So yeah, I mean, it depends. Like I show up on networks that are not that.
Yeah, you show
great.
up on RT.
Yeah, I've been on RT. That Harry Culver's The World, isn't he hosted on a problematic? I don't remember who syndicates him, but like I'll do it. But I trust myself to do pretty strong pushback, generally speaking. It just depends. Yeah, these are like really complicated questions. I think it's hard to have a correct answer all the time. Yeah, but I would never go on, like if I got an invite by Ben Shapiro or Matt Walsh to go on their show to do like a Hasan bashing segment, it's going to include 50-50 is going to be bashing Trump too. Like I'm never going to show up as a tool to just attack the left or further left people to mirror other people on their platforms. Yeah.
Okay.
I think so, yeah. So, I don't. So sometimes I'm like, I wonder, if you're engaging with Barry, if we're doing this game, which I don't think we necessarily should be, like, fuck, if you want to write an article on the Free Press, if they gave me an opportunity, I would write a fucking article on the Free Press. But if we're playing this game, and like, I consider the Free Press to be, a media source of the enemy, a really like a bad thing. But that, again, just applying that standard there. But talking more specifically about the like what you said regarding Hasan.
They're talking about Dan's article right now.
They're talking about Dan's article. Yeah, it's like a 5-minute read if you want to read it, but
sure, maybe.
I think that's fine and good to want people to be equipped to engage in an appropriate and not an inappropriate way with someone like Hasan Piker. I wonder, like someone like Adam Mockler, who is definitely equipped, I would say way more equipped than I am, certainly, to deal in high intensity, he's a young guy, but high intensity, high pressure situations in terms of debate, in terms of, what he did with this guy, Scott. What's his name? Scott something.
Scott Jennings.
Jenkins.
Jenkins?
Jenkins, right?
Jennings.
Jennings. Yes.
Jenkins. Okay. No, like he seems more equipped than anyone possibly could be with regard to aptitude. But it does feel perhaps, I don't know about you, but a lot of people felt that like he was quote unquote unprepared by that conversation. But I watched that conversation. I'm just like, it feels like he did a good job. And so
Pisco, of course, would think that. Again, Pisco just has no mind for politics, but that's okay. I will read this real quick, I guess. Fuck it.
Do you want here, let me give you the...
What?
Oh, do you have the screenshot of it? Okay,
yeah. Go. Nobody ever has pinned a poster of Gary Peters to their bedroom wall. Most Americans, shown his face, could not place him. If forced to guess, they might land on a regional insurance executive, which I suppose is close enough to the truth. Peters is the senior senator from Michigan. and he's retiring next year. He's also, by a wide margin, the single most effective American legislator of the past 2 decades. In a single 2-year span, he personally authored 19 standalone bills that became law, the most by any senator in 4 decades. The Nonpartisan Center for Effective Lawmaking has rated him the most effective U.S. senator for 3 consecutive Congresses, based on a formula that measures their success in advancing meaningful legislation. His score in the most recent Congress is the highest they have ever recorded for anyone ever. But the most troubling thing is not that no one knows who Gary Peters is, it's that the race to succeed him has been taken over by someone who's not even on the ballot, Hasan Piker, the socialist influencer who has appeared alongside the progressive candidate Abdul al-Sayed at campaign rallies. Instead of a debate about policy, the Michigan Senate race has become a question whether Piker, who has said America deserved 9/11 and repeatedly called Jews inbred, belongs in the Democrats' Big Tent. This is the trap both American political parties have walked into. We treat our loudest extremists as serious thinkers who deserve serious rebuttals while ignoring the boring moderates who actually pass laws. Both halves of that equation need flipping. Stop dignifying the wackos, start noticing the legislators. Jean-Paul Sartre, writing in 1946, already saw the first half of this. Never believed the anti-Semites are completely unaware of the absurdity of their replies. He wrote in Anti-Semite and Jew. They know that their remarks are frivolous, open to challenge, but they are amusing themselves, for it is their adversary who is obliged to use words responsibly, since he believes in words. They delight in acting in bad faith, since they seek not to persuade by sound argument, but to intimidate and disconcert. This is the deal voters keep accepting by default, the thrilling, telegenic, ideologically pure senator who passes nothing, but has more brand recognition than the boring one who silently and effectively passes legislation that improves the lives of Americans. We print Bernie Sanders' likeness on t-shirts and let Peters retire unnoticed. Compare Peters' record with the senators whose names you actually know. Ted Cruz has been in the Senate since 2013 and until recently ranked near the bottom of the effectiveness rankings every cycle. Josh Hawley is famous for one raised fist and not much legislation. The most recognizable senator in America, Bernie Sanders, during his more than 35 years in Congress, has authored only 3 standalone bills that became law. 2 of them were to rename Vermont post offices. The pattern is not partisan. The senators who command the most attention are, almost without exception, the ones doing the least work. And now, the race to replace Peters represents that divide. One of the top contenders in the Democratic Party is Mallory McMorrow, a 2-term Michigan state senator who has actually won elections. Both McMorrow and El-Sayed are currently trailing Representative Haley Stevens, a moderate Democrat in the polls, but Stevens is losing ground fast. The media is focused on the 2 challengers who may symbolize the future of the Democratic Party. McMorrow flipped a Republican seat in 2018, cruised to re-election with 78% of the vote in 2022, and was chosen by her colleagues as Senate Majority Whip, the first woman in Michigan history to hold the role. From that position, she helped flip the chamber for the first time in nearly 4 decades and consolidate Democratic control over the legislature. Then she used the control to pass laws, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2027, funding universal school meals, banning underage marriage, and eliminating the retirement tax on seniors. You may have actually seen her once, even if you don't remember her name. In 2022, a Republican colleague sent a fundraising email calling her a groomer. McMorrow walked to the floor of the Michigan Senate and gave a 4-minute speech that did not engage the smear, did not debate its merits, and did not apologize for anything. She named it as the cynical nonsense it was, called the colleague out by name, sat down. The clip garnered tens of millions of views in a week. El-Sayed, the Sanders-endorsed progressive running against McMorrow, is taking a different approach. This spring, the largest events of his campaign have been rallies alongside Piker, the Twitch streamer who preaches class war and practices luxury consumption. El-Sayed is running with a catalog of campaign promises ranging from Medicare for all to a ban on artificial intelligence that replaces human jobs. He ran a credible 2018 gubernatorial campaign, served as Detroit's executive health director during a hepatitis A outbreak, and has built a real media platform. He's not a clown, which is what makes his strategic embrace of Piker so strange. He would, by all available evidence, make a perfectly serviceable progressive senator. The problem isn't him. The problem is the bet he's making to get there. Despite what Jacobin or Newsmax tells you, Americans are still largely moderate. Only 35% of Americans support eliminating private health insurance, endorse it to chase the diehard Medicare for all voters, and you've just told the other 65% that you'd rather lose without them than win with them. Many of those voters would happily back Medicare expansion, a public option, or any number of less maximal versions of the same idea. To be clear, Senate races are not and never have been decided by who can fill a 600-seat lecture hall with people ready to hear about late-stage capitalism with screams of joy. They are won with votes from the people who benefit from policies like universal school meals, the elimination of the retirement tax, and the $15 minimum wage, the things that McMorrow fought for and delivered to Michiganders. And to benefit from policies, someone has to author and pass them, someone effective. Michigan Democrats are making the same decision every candidate, journalist, and cable news producer makes 100 times a week. The boring stuff that improves people's lives does not trend on social media. The extremist clowns do, amusing themselves exactly as Sartre, is it Sartre? I think it's Sartre is how you say his name, warned they would. Pick that clown often enough, and the tent we keep enlarging turns out to have circus stripes. Cute. But yeah, I think it's a good article.
Yeah. I don't know. It just gatekeeping is a bit the word. / moral frogging is another word that I would use.
Wait. For what? For this article?
No. For people who are getting mad about Dan posting on the Free Press or whatever their website is.
Oh, okay.
I just I don't know why people are angry about that.
Well, they're probably
About
angry because
which
it's
website it is.
because it's the fucking Barry Weiss shit or whatever, right? But I mean,
I understand that. Yeah, I guess.
yeah.
Would a Republican ever be fucking mad about somebody getting posted on a certain fucking website? Why the infighting?
Well, I would have to see the infighting. The problem is that if it's Morbler or Shervin, it's probably more team sports.
Morbler.
For him it's team sports 100%. And then for a lot of people it'll come down to like a team sports thing. They don't actually care where it's being written they don't care where it's being written. They just don't like the content of the article. And then this is the easiest vector to attack it, basically.
Got it. Okay.
All right.
Makes more sense.
I guess I don't understand
mad about the place it was written to. So
Sure.
what
Well,
preparedness.
is he? Pisco said he'd write for the Free Press though if he got invited to. No.
Yeah, I guess, but he did end up saying that. The reason I said that he was saying it was bad is because he basically said it was a Barry Weiss rag at the start of it.
Well, it is. Oh wait, the article or the site?
The site.
Well, I think the site kind of is, but then he literally said, if they invited me to.
He did after, but when you call a site a rag, don't you think that that's saying like that's probably a bad place, and you aren't you like shitting on the site / where the article would be then?
Yeah, but you could still. It would depend on what comes next, right? And if he says I'd write there, I'll say I would make the same statements about RT, right? Russia Today.
Yeah. Yeah, but you'd go on there.
Look
Okay,
like
I agree with that.
that would construe someone like Mockler to be unprepared, and what would he need to do to be prepared? I think maybe people just took an issue with how he did the conversation, not about preparedness.
I definitely don't think that Adam Mockler was unprepared. That wasn't like the issue that I had with the debate. You're talking about the debate with Hasan, right?
Yeah, where they were like talking about the hypothetical regarding Gavin Newsom versus JD Vance, and then the related conversations.
I thought he was stronger in the first 45 minutes to an hour, and then definitely weaker in the last half. I think that my issue with his conversation with Hasan is that I think he, in an effort to perform better optically and not look.
But Pisco would write something anti-right if he got onto the Free Press. So would Destiny, but Dan did not. I don't think Dan's article was anti-left.
No, Dan's article was like
I wouldn't characterize that. Well, I think he was criticizing the gamble for an extremist representation of the party. Yeah.
Yes.
Too aggressive. I think he can see.
Hold on one sec.
Gets a call from the front desk. Hey, Steve, the cops are here again. Yeah, let them up. My whole opinion is I don't think most people knew about the FP before Dan's fucking article in the DG community. I could be wildly off on that. I'd never heard about it, and I've been reading articles for the past, 2 months every single fucking morning. And I haven't heard about that one. But, even if it is a center right, or I guess we'll call it a right-leaning website, I think Dan's article was fine. I think Dan's article, if anything, pulls people towards the center left. I don't like the shitting on Dan for where his article ended up getting published at. I think that's a pretty retarded thing to fight about, personally. Why don't I like Abdul besides Hasan? I haven't said that I dislike Abdul. I don't know enough about the Michigan race to go one way or the other. None of these people are going to be my candidates. Undefeated. think it's fair to compare effectiveness of congressmen by just number of legislation they've authored. I think it's a metric that you can talk about 100%.
Okay, wait, sorry. My speakers weren't on. What did I just miss?
Nothing. I was just saying I don't think it's fair to criticize Dan because he got published on a right-wing-ish website when he wrote a center-left article.
I mean, like, I think I've been openly critical of Dan because I think sometimes he has promoted people that I don't think I would ever have. I shouldn't really be promoting like tectone attacks against Asmongold, or not Asmongold, against Hasan, or like Asmongold attacks against Hasan. I might have a long time ago, but generally I won't, because I just, and if I am, it's like, I know that it's like, oh, this doesn't feel good. Whereas I feel like Dan was a bit more eager to in the past. And I think I've criticized Dan a lot for, depending on who he casts his lot in with. But this article was not that at all. I think this is a perfectly fine article. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would.
No, I 100% hear what you're saying. Like, you were shitting on Dan pretty hard, and I would say rightfully so, when he was not talking about any of the Asmongold stuff. But I think that we bullied him enough into now we talk about it. Now we talk about tectone, etc. I think Dan just goes from the side of like the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Oh,
so.
sure. Regardless, I'm just saying that like when Dan does stuff that I disagree with, I'll call it out. But like this was not that. I don't think. Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
Did too much in the back half. So Hasan was making some like really generalized claims about the Democratic Party that I think plays into his like larger narrative about the Democratic Party, which is I think he thinks the party is like really fundamentally evil, and I think things like he I think he literally believes that the Democratic Party would rather lose to Donald Trump than let progressives win, like that kind of like true kind of light fascism kind of thing. And I think
I've heard that from like Cenk Uygur too, so it's not something that's like unheard of. And
no, this is everywhere.
These spheres. Yeah.
And so I think Adam, in an effort to not come across as too combative, he gave way too many concessions, I think, and so that was my frustration with their conversation.
And
so the frustration here is one of content, because these guys have. I think Hutch I think he's realized this, or maybe he hasn't. I don't know. These guys have different strategies, right? Like Pisco is totally fine, I think, with promoting Hasan a lot more than Hutch is. So Pisco doesn't feel like the Mockler conversation failed at all with Hasan, because he was happy to see Hasan essentially platform to Mockler's audience and for there not to be super critical pushback. Whereas Hutch was looking for a lot more, and I would say I would be as well, looking for a lot more critical pushback, and was sad that it didn't seem to be the case. Yeah.
Too much concessions in virtue of the goal of what, right? Because like I could see being too
wow, Pisco actually identified an issue that was relevant to the conversation. Good job.
Conciliatory to be a problem if it like leads to some like worse outcome.
Yeah, exactly.
But then I think about like, well, hang on, why are these politicians even going on Hasan, and why are people like want to interact with them? Presumably because beyond just like the formalism of the conversation and the points being made and whether it's accurately reflective of Hasan's view, there's some intent to try to garner agreement with the audience. And so in that context, would it have been better if you were more combative in the second half? If you wanted to convince people that there's room, within the audience, I'm not sure in virtue of what goal should it have been otherwise. Maybe you can help explain that.
Well, I think his goal, because their conversation I think happened shortly after Hasan's quote about voting for Newsom over not voting for Newsom if it was him versus Vance. And so I think Adam's goal was very apparent in the first half, because he was pushing back against Hasan's broader claims about the Democratic Party. Right. And then by the time I think a part of this is like Mockler genuinely got just exhausted by the end, because Hasan,
like physically,
I do, or well, mentally, mentally, I think he was a bit exhausted, because Hasan really kind of muscled his way in. I don't know if you saw like the breakdown in terms of like time spoken per minute, like somebody did a detailed analysis, and I think Hasan spoke like literally twice as much. And so
it requires a lot of like energy to listen to everything and not necessarily for him to like ramble on and on.
Especially when you go into a conversation like that with the goal of like
being combative,
you're not just like fighting on the substance, you're fighting on the optics, and like that does matter, I think, in these kinds of arenas. And so if you're Mockler, you're dealing with like essentially what's just like gish galloping, but then also you're
who's this in Hutch's fucking audience? Holy shit. Is this Hutch or Pisco's channel? Holy fucking true. $20 from all elite memes memes AEM3916, Jesus, his name. Hasan has an entire media defense force plus PR team to shield him from criticism. Meanwhile, more and more liberals are throwing each other under the bus whenever attacks come from the left. We have a defense problem, not offense problem. Yeah, true.
You're engaging on the substance, and you're also like mindful of not wanting to look too adversarial. And so I think he just kind of fucking gave up at the end, is what I thought.
That was my donation. Oh, well, good job, Dr. Pibb.
Really, that's shocking me, because it feels that out of anyone in terms of like mental acuity and endurance, someone like Mockler. I mean, this is a young buck. He's energized. He works a lot by all accounts. Everyone that I know that like and he said to me as well that like he is very, very busy. So if it's just a question of endurance, again, I'm not saying that that's untrue, and maybe that was like apparent on his in his demeanor. Maybe I'm forgetting it, but I would be more inclined to think that it's like a strategic decision. That is to say, a conscious strategy that he's deploying to be as amenable as he is in the back half. And if it is, in other words, let's assume that it is.
It wasn't, and you can tell because, in my opinion, I guess I'd have to go back and find out exactly when this happened. It feels like the moment most of the wind got sucked from his sails were after Hasan dropped that fucking "why are you being such a debate, bro" comment.
Why would that be bad? And it would only be bad, I think, if it's contradictory to some goal. And that, I think, is where I'm getting at. Is like, what should have been the goal?
Well,
is this a mixed set of things?
Well, I think Adam's goal in the context of Hasan's position on 2028 Newsom versus Vance was to try to convince Hasan, or maybe people in Hasan's audience, that there's a meaningful difference between the Democratic Party, and even if you don't align perfectly with whoever the nominee becomes,
Sure, Hasan conceded that, to Mockler's credit.
I don't know if he
Not really. I don't remember that, but
did he? What do you mean?
I think at the start of it, he said, yes, I know that Gavin Newsom would be less harm and would be it would be better if Newsom were. I think he did concede that at the start. I remember him conceding it. I could be wrong about that.
I would have to go back and look. I don't remember that meaningfully.
I think that he conceded on the answer to the hypothetical, which is different. It's crucially different to say that Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom would be better. That's different than who would you vote for, who would you endorse. Very crucially different questions. I don't think Hasan ever conceded that he was wrong to answer the way he did on the Newsom hypothetical.
Never did that, no.
But I do think that he conceded that it's preferable that Newsom win, in the way that he would say, obviously Kamala Harris would be better than Donald Trump. And I think I have heard him say that.
But Hasan still defends his decision. I know it wasn't about that combo, but Hasan still defends his decision not to endorse Kamala. How do you, without using some wacky,
with looking at what's there now, how
accelerationist argument of like, well, we're in a better spot now because more Dems are talking about radical. I guess, yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. That feels paradoxical to me. I don't know. The only way to make sense of it is that
an accelerationist argument.
To come to the conclusion that Hasan is a accelerationist.
Yes.
That's like the only other. Because if you
mind melded,
if you're saying that the outcomes would be meaningfully better if Newsom won, but you wouldn't commit to voting for Newsom, then I think Hasan's perspective.
It is a contradiction. Wait, no. So there is a contradiction there, and that contradiction I think isn't as much exposed by the hypothetical of the voting, so much as the hypothetical of the Hamas versus Israel conversation, right? Because that the Hamas versus Israel conversation kind of commits him to a harm reductionist framework. The way he justifies outrageously saying that, like, Hamas is so clearly
That's a really good point from Pisco that somehow Hasan has always been able to escape criticism from. That Hasan will say that, like, when it comes to Hamas, Hasan becomes the number one harm reductionist, right? Like, well, no revolution is perfect, or no resistance is perfect. Like, they do have a right to resist, even in an imperfect way. Like, you can understand their perspective and all that. So he's very harm reductionist when it comes to Hamas, right? Actually, literally, consequentially, numerically, he supports the harm reductionist narrative. When somebody was he the one who said, like, who's worse, Hamas or Israel? And it's like, well, Israel has killed more, so Hamas is not as bad. Like, what could that be beyond harm reduction consequentialism, right? Yeah.
Or two evil between Israel and Hamas, at least when I say that, I mean relative to a lot of people's perceptions. When he says that, he is conceding that it's like the lesser of two evils, and that there's like a distinction for which he is sensitive, as between Hamas and Israel. And so I think that is where the contradiction emerges. But I have actually heard people, and I think you have too, who say, like, I'm not sensitive to the difference in outcomes between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Like, there have been people, Prime Kai is an example, respect to Prime Kai and everything, where he said, if you could show that my singular vote would save 20,000 lives in Gaza, specifically, if I voted for Kamala Harris, I still wouldn't do it. Yeah. So there are people who you and I would consider to be, like, probably morally insane, who nonetheless are not contradictory and say things like, yeah, I'm not sensitive to the massive difference between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, because there's just like a deontological line that I will not vote for someone in this context. I think the contradiction emerges when you bring out the Hamas-Israel comparison.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's a contradiction if you accept that Hasan, at the very minimum, has some kind of sympathetic view of accelerationism, or is open to accelerationism. And even in that conversation with Mockler asked him, do you think you're getting closer to your goals or further away from your goals if someone like Donald Trump wins? And Hasan very honestly answered, well, no, it's actually just historical fact that socialist movements tend to thrive more when there's more chaos and instability.
Yeah, I think that statement would suggest that he's open to accelerationism for sure.
Yeah.
Open to? Destiny, the Trump DOJ is asking the Supreme Court to let it step in on Trump's appeal of the E. Jean Carroll civil suit, where he has to pay $83 million. If granted, it'll swap the U.S. as the defendant in the lawsuit, and since the U.S. can't be sued for defamation, it'll cost the case. Why would the... I'm sorry, can the United States government rape somebody? How is it even possible? Well, allow it to step in on President Donald Trump's appeal of the $83.3 million jury verdict in a defamation lawsuit brought by the writer E. Jean Carroll. A move that would doom Carroll's case. In a Tuesday filing, Assistant U.S. Attorney General Brett Shumate said the government would seek to use the Westfall Act. What? I don't even know what the Westfall Act is. The act gives federal employees immunity from some civil damages when they are found to have been acting within the scope of their employment. This was for when Donald Trump wasn't president, and wasn't he sued when he wasn't president? Did the E. Jean Carroll case happen in the during Biden's term, or was it before that? I don't remember.
That was before.
I don't remember when that was. Somebody said yes. Defamation was when he was president. It was during
Raping
Biden's
her was a
term.
presidential act, I guess.
Why can't he just pay it? Isn't he rich now anyway? Oh, he was president when he made the defamatory comments. Oh.
Apparently his income has tripled since his second term.
Yeah, what about his wealth? Jesus.
Or that's what I meant, wealth.
Oh, yeah, that's what I've heard, yeah.
But
Yeah, no, no doubt about that. But like, I'm kind of asking, like, what do you think Mockler's goal should have been? And in what sense was like the latter half of the conversation not in keeping with the goal? Like, if the goal is to convince the audience to be more open to Democrats, how does it serve that goal to be any different than he is? And maybe there's multiple goals and there's not one single goal. But like, talk to me about why you think you're disappointed in the second half. In other words, with respect to what end do you think that he's not achieving what he should be?
Well, I think his goal, again, was to counter the proposition from Hasan that there's not really a meaningful difference, which is what...
Oh. Wait, did you stream this morning?
Mm-hmm.
Did you see what happened in Virginia?
Oh, I sent that to you, right?
Oh, shit, I think you did. You were.
Yeah. Jesus.
The FBI
raided... Yeah.
The FBI raided the office of Virginia Senate President Pro Tempore Louise Lucas. Is that the lady who makes all the base comments on Twitter?
I haven't seen her.
This comes weeks after she spearheaded a redistricting effort in Virginia, netting up to 4 new blue seats. Like,
Pretty crazy.
again, I don't know how to put into words how weird this is. Like, this isn't even... I feel like it's not even like Putin authoritarian behavior, because I don't even think they would use like official police for this. You'd send like thugs to do shit like this. You wouldn't actually send your uniformed police. You would just send like thugs who you would understand like, oh, this is fucking, the government's fucking with me. It's so crazy, bro. Oh my God. All right.
a non-committal to vote in 2028.
Trump DOJ tipped off Fox News in advance, so Fox was on hand when the raid occurred. I mean, they think that, remember, the Republicans feel like the liberals have always been tipped off. I think Roger Stone made that accusation or whatever as well, right? Yeah.
There's not really a meaningful difference, which is what a non-committal to vote in 2028 implies, that Hasan doesn't think that there's like a meaningful difference there. And so I think Mockler's, the position that he was defending was that actually there's a huge world of difference. And actually, the Democratic Party has done a lot of like really good things. And so that was like obviously what the case that he was making. But by the end, especially like the last like 40 minutes, Hasan would throw these kind of claims out there, and I don't think I need to give you specifics, but like, him, like he'll throw these like claims about the Democratic Party that are thrown around like very frequently in those spaces, so much that they're just accepted as true,
like misinterpretations or things that are omitting material context.
Yeah, and Mockler very frequently towards end.
On the Dan topic, do you not think it's a little weird to draw a line in the sand and cancel your New York Times sub over a few bad op-eds, but Dan promoting a Barry Weiss site that's actively working to dilute editorial standards isn't a big deal? No, because those two things have absolutely, literally nothing to do with one another. You're trying to connect two wildly different actions. Like, I would write, if the New York Times asked me to submit an op-ed, I would do it 100%. There's a woman I'm talking to, I think is coming on stream in a couple of days, who wants to talk about an op-ed she wrote about AI stuff. Like, I have no problem. Like, I would write for the New York Times if they asked me to. These are totally different. You're trying to stretch so hard to relate these things.
The conversation would say something like, yeah, no, that's right. Or yeah, no, I can understand that. And in those moments, there were probably like 10 or 20 of those moments where I kind of like physically cringed a little bit. I was like, ooh, what Hasan just said is fucking ridiculous. I really wish you wouldn't have conceded that. And so the downside to that kind of thing
to
is
the actual conversation, like the truth claims being made and the lack of response to like false or misleading claims. That's what manner in which you're disappointed.
Yeah, I want to annihilate those like truisms that exist in those spaces. Like that's really what I've been all about in recent months. Is like I really want to challenge these established what's the word? Like yeah, I guess truism, right? What is a truism? What does that mean?
It's like a conventional wisdom, like a cliche.
Statement that is obviously true and says nothing new or interesting. But what would be like a subjective truism? Like so, there's
truism like it's the economy stupid is a truism, right?
Well, I mean, like, so for example, like the idea that the DNC literally stopped Bernie Sanders from winning in 2020. That is true. That is true in their eyes. It's obviously true in their eyes, right?
In the context of the lefties, that's considered like a truism or like a generally accepted assumed fact, almost to the point of like a cliche.
Yeah, there's a lot of I don't know if the word fits though, because the truism definition here says a statement that is obviously true and says nothing new or interesting. So that to me implies like objective truth.
It's something trivial. So like it would be like it's something that's not usually up for debate, right? Like people would just like laugh out of hand if you were like that Sanders wasn't rat fucked in 2016, right? If you said something like Sanders wasn't rat fucked, they'd be like, what? That's insane.
Right. Exactly.
Or if you like suggest that, so that's the truism aspect. I think it's the correct word. I don't think that whether or not it is or should not be a truism, right? Like I think I kind of split the difference there. I'm like, there's no indication that DNC interference was the reason that Bernie Sanders lost, and I agree with you totally on there. Yeah. I think there is evidence of rat fucking. Just the significance of it and whether it would have caused a different result. I'm totally with you on the outcome there.
Copilot says that truisms can be subjective, so I guess I am using the word correctly. But I really want to, and these truisms,
like I don't think all truisms are necessarily wrong, but I think generally it's like it's what Pisco said. I think it's like it's not up for debate. Like this is a truism. Like you just accept this is true, right? My issue is I feel like there are a lot of truisms that get thrown around that are just not correct, and that's what drives me crazy. So like there's a ton of bloat and waste in the federal government, and bureaucracy is bad. These are like truisms. They're like not even up for debate. And it's like, well, hold on, let's think about these a little bit.
I think our
the word Hutch is looking for is factoid. Somebody in YouTube chat said that. Somebody in my DGG chat has said that a lot too. It's factoid. It's factoid. It's not factoid. I don't know where you get that from. The factoid had an original meaning and then it's morphed into another meaning. A factoid used to be a false minor fact given that was just like a lie. And then factoid like morphed into meaning like here's just a quick fact about a thing. But I don't think factoid has ever been synonymous with truism. That's me. I'm the one who says in a kick chat, oh yeah, okay, yeah, you're wrong. I don't know why you spam that every single time I bring up like this concept of like a truism.
Most relevant in online spaces, and
so like it was like so some people could say like it's a factoid that you swallow 7 spiders in your mouth over your lifetime while you're sleeping. That's like a factoid because it was like a little thing written in a book to see if it could be spread as a false fact, and now for a long time people just like believed that as true. So it was like a factoid or whatever, because of like how it was spread and everything, but not. I don't think it's quite the same meaning as like a truism.
I think. Are most relevant in online spaces, and there's so many of these truisms that exist that I really just want to fucking annihilate because it just drives me insane. And maybe you can appreciate this as like a lawyer, and so you're all about like I assume that for you when you hear something that you perceive to be a bad argument, it makes you physically like ill.
Yes,
right. Like so,
yeah,
like
that's what I feel about like the Merrick Garland stuff. I think it's like conventional wisdom that Merrick Garland is some significant portion for why we're fucked among liberals. And that drives me crazy. Same thing with, I probably agree with a lot of the same sacred cows or whatever of the lefties. Certainly of the righties, I'm like any people who say Russiagate is a hoax, I call it the Russiagate hoax. So certainly
Trump derangement syndrome.
Get triggered when I hear what I think are like assumed sacred cows, assumed conventional wisdoms. That does drive me crazy, or what I think are bad arguments.
I think that's something that you and me have in common because I know that about you. I know that like it drives you. It really is like I feel like it's literally physically painful for you to be confronted with something that is accepted as conventional wisdom, but you think is false or some kind of like bad argument. I'm the same way, and I see a lot of that happen in these like lefty spaces. And for example, like how many times have you heard the idea or the notion that Obama could have codified Roe v. Wade but chose not to?
Oh,
yeah, I've heard that. I've heard the thing about Manchin with respect to the votes on the various different provisions of Joe Biden's agenda, where there's something that could have been done, that Joe Biden could have done something to effectuate a different outcome. Now, I've often said that Joe Biden should have been more forceful, more rhetorical for other benefits, But I agree that a lot of these conventional wisdoms that like the Democrats chose not to codify Roe v. Wade, the Democrats chose to lose on the votes with respect to the most recently on the Affordable Care Act for the public option. I've heard that. So yeah, I
like the
definitely,
public option in 2009 too. Yeah. I mean, you and me disagree a lot on like what those.
Aquila, I see all of your messages. I've seen them constantly. I see that you want me to take a writing class. I don't even know what spurred on that comment. I see you every single day say that I need to play Redactyl over and over and over again. I see all of your comments. I don't know why you spam them over and over again. Yes, I've seen them. Yes. Jesus, chill. My God.
Particular things are, but you understand the concept of what I'm talking about.
I don't know that we do there, right? Like I think that we agree that in 2009 there was not really.
I didn't mean specifically that. I didn't mean specifically that. I mean like there's a lot that we disagree on in terms of like what is incorrect and what is correct. But the
I'm not so sure that that's true. I think we agree on most things. I know that we disagree the most on live and learn, but I actually don't think that there's a big side. I think the biggest disagreements we have are like on strategy that Democratic insiders should take and like messaging. Like, can you identify like a?
I do think one issue with Pisco is, I do think Pisco is a bit of a debate pedophile, in that he is more likely to state a disagreement than an agreement, and he's more likely to be sensitive to like debate conditions that might make you think he has a different position than he does. So like, I think I was accurate. Yes, was it yesterday or the day before when he was on Live and Learn, and I was like, I don't think he's debating here. Against Taylor Lorenz, not because he agrees with her, but because I think it feels bad that it's like a 3v1 or 2v1 at least right now. I think that's why he's probably not saying anything. And he did later on say, he's like, oh, I didn't want to jump in. And then I think Pisco's less likely to speak up if he believes that there is he's less likely to speak up if he feels like there's agreements and more likely to speak up with disagreements. So you get the perception that he disagrees with you a lot more than he does. I used to be very similar to that. I still kind of am. I try to state agreements more, but it's an issue that I have like that's like a thing that's like intrinsic to me that I have to like fight against. Yeah.
Beyond that, like a substantive political disagreement, I'm not sure. I think it's overstated.
It's not ideological. Like I don't think it's. I'm not talking about ideological differences, but like I think the biggest disagreement that you and I consistently have is you seem to take a view that the Democratic Party in a realistic ideal state would almost have like perfect unanimity. So like if you have 60 votes in the Senate, then you should expect 60 votes for each bill. Like you don't take it as far as Kyle does in terms of like bringing the IRS or the DOJ.
Wait, what?
You seem to take a view that the Democratic Party in a realistic ideal state would almost have like perfect unanimity. So like if you have 60 votes in the Senate, then you should expect 60 votes for each bill. Like you don't take it as far as Kyle does in terms of like bring in the IRS or the DOJ or something like that. But you get viscerally angry when there are, 6 or 7 Democratic senators that are breaking from the party.
I'd be curious what Pisco's actual stance on this, and I'd be curious what Hutch means on this. I think, although I think Hutch did say ideally, in an ideal world, I don't think it should be that way. But right now, I think it kind of has to be that way because, bro, we got to have some unity amongst our Dems because the Republicans are fucking 100% lockstep unified on fucking everything. Jesus.
They're also crazy.
Yeah, yes. So we have to be unified against the insanity.
Whereas
on things,
I see it as something that you should expect. Like it's just a normal part of politics.
I think those are different things. Yeah, in terms of normalcy, in terms of it's expected, I don't think that I would dispute you that it's expected that you have some amount of holdouts in these kinds of legislations given the outcomes. I think that that's conflating a normative reaction, which is to say it shouldn't occur, with one about what you would normally expect, which I might not even dispute with you.
But I look at it like you say. Should it occur? What did you say? Or is it like
So
people
about whether
people should I agree, like we should have a public option or we should have this, but like when I think about those things, I don't get necessarily angry in the way that I.
Hutch is referring to the lefties telling people not to vote for imperfect candidates. Oh,
I think you do. I use that as like a guiding star, and I think it makes you like more angry.
So I separate in my head what's expected and what I think should occur, and sometimes when there's a disparity between what's expected and what should occur, it will cause me to be like angry, upset, or frustrated, or whatever. Not always, but in some situations which I consider.
She released a statement. Today's actions by federal agents are about far more than one state senator. They're about power and who is allowed to use it on behalf of the people. What we saw fits a clear pattern from this administration. When challenged, they try to intimidate and silence the voices who stand up to them. Just 2 weeks ago, Virginians sent a powerful message when they voted to stop Trump's scheme to manipulate the 2026 midterm elections. Voters across the Commonwealth made clear that power belongs to the people, not with politicians who try to take power away from them. I was proud to help lead that effort, and I've never been afraid to stand up to Donald Trump or anyone else that has tried to undermine our democracy. I am deeply grateful for the love and support of my family and friends, and for the many colleagues and constituents who have reached out in recent days. I will have more to say in the days ahead, but know this, I am not backing down, and I will keep fighting for the people of Portsmouth, and the Commonwealth of Virginia. Queen.
To be key indicators of things that matter to me. So, for example, the future of the Democratic Party and where the leadership stands. I think when there is that mismatch between what should have occurred and what was likely to occur, or what did occur, it does upset me. But usually it's on things that I care the most about. And maybe I usually am like, will not even mention it if it's something that I don't care about, right? It's almost like I understand the impression that I might give, that I want unanimity or a unanimous Democratic caucus all the time, no matter what. But I think that impression sometimes is given extra force by the fact that I would only comment on things that matter to me. So in the context of the seven people who voted against the
let's do the Lincoln Riley bill. Let's do that one.
Lincoln Riley Act. Yeah,
both senators in Georgia voted for that bill, and when I saw that, I was like, well, that makes sense. It's like a very purple state, very different constituency. I might not even like the bill, but that doesn't really matter to me. So when I saw those votes, I was like, well, that makes sense. You saw those votes and you thought it was a betrayal. You thought it was, Yeah, I'll
tell you why. Right. So I think that for the Lincoln Riley Act, I'm happy to, in general, be willing to deal on immigration matters. Like in the bipartisan border bill that Biden proposed, I'm gonna be honest with you, there's a lot of provisions there that I don't agree with. But I was willing to say, you know what, that's fine.
Scale back
it's fine if we have some
asylum.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, but in the context of the political outcome here, I'm fine with Democrats getting a compromise. I'm fine with letting some people vote against it and some people vote in favor of it. So it's not just the topic of immigration that I'm unwilling to deal on. Specifically with the Lincoln Riley Act, this was about failing to meet the moment on Trump specifically. That and about what's contained in the Lincoln Riley Act. The Lincoln Riley Act gives additional forms of mandatory detention in the United States. Right. That is incredibly dangerous, and so detention power is one of the most dangerous powers. One of the most
what? Mutin.
Yeah.
What is the Democratic Party's mainstream position? Like the main Democrat. What is the Democratic Party's position on immigration?
I would say that the mainstream position would probably be that immigration's pretty good, but they don't like when people come over illegally. But they understand why they would.
What do you think they want to do about it?
The mainstay position?
Mm-hmm. From lawmakers.
No. Amnesty would be my position.
Do you have an idea from the lawmakers?
The lawmakers? I have no idea. No fucking clue.
Nobody knows. I have no idea. I don't know the answer to that. And that's the issue with when you talk about the Lincoln Riley Act or any of these bills, the Republicans get to choose all the battlegrounds because Democrats just have not put out strong positions on a lot of these topics. And then, god damn, imagine not having a strong position on this topic that everybody can publicly access. And now a bill comes before you named after a woman who I guess was killed by an illegal immigrant. And that's the ground you want 2 senators in Georgia to fight on? I'm sorry, man. Fuck
why
that.
don't the Dems have a fucking position out there they're shouting from the rooftops?
Because they don't have platforms to push these positions out onto. Everything is just an attack and a defense everywhere. They don't have any media apparatus like the Republicans do to put out positions. So
incredibly dangerous, and so detention power is one of the most dangerous powers. One of the most cherished things about our country is your literal protection in terms of physical liberty, and giving the Trump administration a greater basis to claim mandatory detention authority, not on convictions of crimes, but on mere accusations, sometimes in concert with state actors. It was, in my opinion, just eminently foreseeable that mandatory detention issues is what we're going to be fighting on. And lo and behold, it was and is, right? In the context of the Trump administration, right now,
they don't have a strong position because they're scared of their left flank. Yes, I agree with you. And again, you're going to get so tired of hearing me say this over the next year. I swear to God, you're going to hate me saying this, okay? But you're looking at something that is at the end of the pipeline and not why it's happening. They're scared of the left flank because they don't have the messaging apparatus, and the left flank does. They don't have it. So they can never put out a position in a safe place, have that position reinforced and battle ready, and then go to other places to fight for it. It just immediately goes out like an aborted child, onto the floor and is getting fucking destroyed by every single person that talks about it. That's the issue.
have a circuit split on the mandatory detention provision.
I don't know. Wasn't Biden pretty outspoken about getting illegals who live here a while? Well, when the Democrats have a president, we kind of have some kind of like a messaging platform, but only when we have a president. But that's because he's the president. So like that feels like our leader. But when we don't have a president, whoo, we got nothing. Republicans can maintain their messaging even in times where they're not in political office, at least for the presidency.
Told it was and is, right? In the context of the Trump administration, right now we have a circuit split on the mandatory detention provision contained in the INA, where it's like a massive, humongous big deal whether or not people are going to have access to like bond.
Oh God, do you remember the humongous thing?
I was literally about to laugh about that. Yeah.
Man.
Hearings.
Humongous
and so for
what?
me, in the context in which the Trump administration is like promising to go against rights, like we're about to see some of the worst immigration crackdowns and the deportation of of Kelmar Berger Garcia, all that stuff. It was so foreseeable. And I can't ever, I really can't deal on rights. When it comes to rights, that's not something I'm willing to deal with. And so because I viewed the mandatory detention issue there as a key to the like, sort of looming fight that we're going to have with an authoritarian regime, I viewed it as conceding on rights. And I think it is
Let me ask
one
you
of the
a
battle
question.
lines that we're having here, yeah.
Let me ask you a question. If we could devise a machine or a computer, some kind of algorithm that could tell you with 100% certainty that by voting for the Lake and Riley Act, Ossoff and Warnock 100% guaranteed that they would win re-election in their next election. Would you?
Yeah, I would vote for it, yeah.
Okay. So that's interesting to me. That's interesting to me.
One thing that I think Hutch misses sometimes, and this has been kind of part of our ongoing fights on things, is I think that people don't give enough credit sometimes to how you can shape opinions with your fights. You don't have to wait for the party to be ready for a thing before you fight for it. Sometimes you can start the fight, and in the process of fighting for it, you shape the party opinion. Like, for example, see literally every single fucking thing that Donald Trump has done. Like none of this shit was, no Republican, in 2022 was like, we need tariffs on the entire world. We need to go to war with Iran. Like nobody was saying this, but in the process of beginning to fight for it, you can shape party opinion. Now this isn't perfect. You can't do it on everything, but you can't just wait for the party to show up and then support a thing. Sometimes you got to push a little bit. And then in the process of having the fight, you make the argument, ideally on friendly platforms. And then you have the, and then you prepare the base for the political opinion.
Yeah. I'm willing to, like, in the sense that I say I'm not willing to deal, it's an exaggeration. Like, there are things that I'm willing to deal on when it comes to overall rights in this country. And so, if you were to give me a time, like, yeah, I'm a consequentialist before I'm a deontologist when it comes to that, for sure. But part of the reason why I'm not upset about it is, that I am upset about it, is I don't think that it was like a consequential vote that is a determiner about whether or not they're going to be elected or not. If I did have that notion, then I might think differently. So it's one where there's a high salience in terms of the issue for me, and where my intuition isn't that that this would have been necessary for their reelection, in part because I predicted that when Trump was going to institute these immigration things, that it wasn't going to become unpopular. And so I think that oftentimes Democrats are accused plausibly, and I mean this seriously, of like, have you ever heard the term, have you played like soccer or anything? And it's like, go to where the ball's gonna be. Don't go to the ball. Like, go where the ball's gonna be. And it feels like Democrats are often like,
prophylaxis is what we call that.
Yes, the last battle. And so to me, it's not just that it was that you could conceive of. And I think that they probably, if you were to ask them behind closed doors, they'd probably be like, it was kind of a mistake, or I don't really feel about it, but this is like, I think that they were, if I were to really be good faith about it, and I think it's honest and true, that they were trying to look towards their reelection and a moment in which there was a lot of uncertainty. So I'm not saying that they're bad people.
Those are tough
What
decisions, I think.
I'm not down if it's a tough decision overall in the scheme of the country, whatever. I do think though that this was predictable, and I do think that they made the wrong decision.
I don't necessarily agree with that. It's always hard to know like what thing is going to happen. Like, yeah, we were in a very, I don't even want to say the word lucky. That's too dark. But like the Renee Good and the Alex Preddy killings definitely morphed how Americans saw the ICE stuff and the illegal immigration enforcement stuff, for sure. Even on the Republican side, it morphed it a little bit. But like, that being said, was there a possibility that there could have been, another accident or attack or something that involved an illegal immigrant? Like, maybe. Remember, these situations are all like incredibly rare. For as evil and terrible as ICE has been, it's not like they've killed, like 1,000 U.S. citizens or something, despite them getting so much funding and being all over the U.S. So it is kind of hard to predict, and then to bank your future election chances on predicting these one-off events happening,
And that's sort of like why I'm pissed about it. But it's not something where I'm like, I'm unwilling to ever vote for them ever again. In fact, we had like
Wait, what? Hold on.
Tough decision overall in the scheme of the country, whatever. I do think though that this was predictable, and I do think that they made the wrong decision. And that's sort of like why I'm pissed about it. But it's not something where I'm like, I'm unwilling to ever vote for them ever again.
Oh.
In fact, we had like Mark Kelly on. You weren't able to do it. I think you were busy that day. But yeah, like, I would vote for Mark Kelly. I would vote. Yeah.
I don't roll on Saturdays.
I would vote for Ruben Gallego if he wins the primary or whatever. And so I don't think that I'm like this all or nothing person. But I will express frustration when it's like a major, like it's so obvious Trump is going to be using these immigrants.
I'm behind, but when did factoid mean something false? It always meant just a small, interesting fact. Maybe, I don't know how old you are, but when factoid was first introduced as a term, it deliberately meant something that was not true. But I think when media picked up the term and started using it more, factoid just meant like small, quick fact, basically. It doesn't, like I would say today, factoid no longer has that connotation. Factoid just means small, quick fact, basically. But I think when it was invented originally, it meant like an incorrect small fact, like it was wrong.
But I will express frustration when it's like a major, like it's so obvious Trump is going to be using these immigration authorities to like fuck around and find out. And that's exactly what happened. Now, at the end of the day, right, like, would he have done it independent of the Lake and Riley Act? Almost certainly, right? Like, the Lake and Riley Act, in other words, is not like Trump was going to do what he was going to do, and the Lake and Riley Act is kind of gravy, right? So you could levy that argument.
I think you're right about the pipeline on everything besides the origin. The origins of messaging is not as concrete as a few think tanks. Like Ezra Klein's abundance created a lot of strong messaging without needing an institution. The origin doesn't necessarily matter so much as having friendly platforms to kind of like have the message resonate on. But the thing is, I feel like abundance did get a fuck ton of pushback from the lefties. I feel like they use abundance as like a slur almost, or at least when I hear like Emma bring it up, I feel like abundance liberals is usually synonymous with centrist or Zionist or neoliberal or whatever, is what it feels like to me. I don't know how much it's talked about now, but maybe it was picked up more seriously kind of in some policy circles for state legislators, which is good. Part of that podcast. We only watched the beginning of it. It seems like they said that. But
the reason I'm frustrated isn't just because the Democrats were a but-for cause for the Lake and Riley Act, or because I thought the Lake and Riley Act was like critical to the abuses that Trump was going to suffer, is that most of the time it's indicative of an inner fecklessness, a weakness. In other words, the thing itself, a lot of these votes don't end up going anywhere. Democrats just don't have the votes to impose the war powers resolution, even assuming that it's constitutional. Democrats just don't have the votes to block these sales to Israel. And even if they did, Trump's probably just going to ignore it. But the point is, I think it's an indicator to me of weakness in certain areas, or just like a kind of people who don't get it and aren't made for the moment. Not always, right? Sometimes you can overcome it. John Ossoff is one of the people who I most am excited about, in spite of his vote for the Lake and Riley Act. Same thing with like Gavin Newsom, right? There's some things that Gavin Newsom has done that I like think are lame and weird and stupid, but I gave him massive credit for the redistricting. I thought that was brave. I thought he was a leader there. So I'm not an all or nothing thinker, but I think that there are a couple of key instances where I'm just like, this makes no fucking sense, guys. Like, think with your heads. But what do I know? You know, but that's just an explanation of like why I get frustrated, is because there are some core areas where I think the Democratic Party just needs to see the future. One of those is Israel. One of those for sure is Israel. Another one is the war in Iran, where I think the Democratic Party has now. The
problem with the Israel thing is, again, it's like the Democrats just haven't put forth a strong positive position on it. And the issue with, like, the biggest issue is that everybody's saying the Democrats need to get right with Israel. Half of these people are anti-Semitic Jew haters. And the other half are like, our relationship with Israel needs to be a complete and total dissolution of any ties whatsoever. And that's not, I just don't think that's realistic for a variety of reasons. And it's a pretty mentally retarded position as well. But I mean, I do agree it's a thing that needs to be addressed. And Democrats need to be much more clear about what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. And then how are you going to restrain Israel if they're doing unacceptable things? Like, what are the punishments? That definitely needs to be addressed more. But a lot of lefties, they throw around that one poll a lot. Like, who do you feel more sympathetic towards, Palestinians or Israelis? And it's like, now for the first time, it's more Palestinians. Lefties take that poll and they run with it to think that the average electorate would be fine with us severing all ties completely with Israel. I don't think that's true.
On a good spot, more or less a good spot on the Iran war. And I'm really happy about that. And I'm really happy that most of the Democrats are reading the room when it comes to Israel and Iran war. That's all really, really good. But another one of those is rights. And so contemporaneously, when I get mad, it's because I think it's like foreseeable or whatever.
I think on the topic of Israel, and I was just telling my chat about this at the start.
The problem is that people driving the anti-Israel conversation are not like politically effective thought leaders. Again, they just, yeah.
But like, for me, I think what is frustrating is, like, if you're someone who wants policy outcomes, if you're someone that wants to change the composition of the Democratic Party to be one that is more adversarial with Netanyahu, to one that is like more or less open to sending arms shipments and financial aid and stuff like that, I think that's a worthy cause, and I'm on board with that cause. Like, I support heavily conditioned aid, or maybe discontinuing aid, reevaluating our relationship with Israel. I also understand that is a long established foreign partner, that it's like a codified relationship with Israel, and so that makes it kind of unique.
If Daily does forget to split his audio the next few days, and something very bad is going to happen. Stay mad, bitch.
And so, for example, like, even if Biden wanted to pause weapon shipments, 5 months, 6 months into that situation, and he wouldn't have been able to do that. Like he would have had to have gone through Congress. The Republicans controlled the House, and so you know, there were a lot of people at the time that just took the view that Biden could have basically stopped that from happening unilaterally. And I don't think I agree with that. I don't think he could have just picked up a phone call.
It's unclear that he would have the political capital to effectuate it. Just to be honest with you, I do think that he should have been different. But
well, I mean, I do think he should have been like tougher, you know, in public for sure. But I don't think he could have stopped that from happening in the way that it did. And I think that there was value in him keeping the Israelis close and not alienating them, because they were able to pressure them to allow aid into the country and evacuate Rafah before they did that big military offensive. And that alone, that Rafah thing, potentially saved tens of thousands of lives. I mean, there were...
Say nothing of the Iran war, which he, I think, prevented.
Right.
That a weaker president like Trump allowed for. So I don't think that Biden's policy overall, like, I think it's way too flattening to be like he was just awful on foreign policy, or indeed even Israel. I think that there's a marked difference between how Biden approached it, how Trump did, and in terms of the amount of leverage that Biden has over his own party, it's considerably less, or even over his own base. And so I do agree with you that there are some structural reasons why Biden can't do everything he wants to do. That notwithstanding that, we can admit that there were mistakes, and yeah, no, So I agree with the limits there. I guess I'm not so much looking retrospectively. I'm looking like prospectively.
No, that's what I was getting at. That's what I was getting at. So moving forward, if you're someone who, like, Gaza and Gaza is your number one issue, and there's a lot of people like that. It's not necessarily a large share of the electorate, but certainly there's a lot of people online for which like this is like a primary issue for them. And I'm not even like knocking that. Like most people focus on the economy and stuff like that, but there's nothing wrong with having anti-war activists in this country. There's, like that's we have a rich history of that. I think that's like one of the cooler things about our country. And like where I was raised, like the Bay Area is like the birthplace of the anti-war movement. So that's pretty cool. But it's just strategically, if that's what your goal is, I think you should want the candidates that you prefer out there aggressively campaigning on corruption, affordability, and anti-Iran war. Like you should center those things in your campaign, because those are going to be the things that connect with voters. And when I was just watching the Majority Report today, and in that video where they were reacting to us, and Emma had, so the point of focusing on that is so that you can get to eventually like electing Democrats that are going to push your kind of preferred policies when it comes to Israel. Like you can count on them in the Congress to be votes against funding or this kind of thing. But Emma had the order reversed. She was saying you have to center Israel Palestine first. That's the litmus test. That's what you need to like focus your run on. And then that way her theory is that by doing that, you're going to get more credibility from the voters, because it's such a lopsided issue now where it's like 80-20, oppose Israel or something like that. And then once you get that buy-in, then you're going to have more credibility to push affordability stuff. And I just think she has that sequence reversed. I think you need to focus on this first, get elected, so you can do this. And
so let me try to steal man, okay? Because I don't want to be heard to say that I think Israel is a top issue among the electorate. By which I mean, if you ask the electorate, what do you care most about? Israel's not going to show up in a top 5 list among general election voters. Okay,
not even top 10.
So I agree with that. I don't want to be heard to think that like I'm overstating it. The reason why I think it's important, in similar ways that like support of Ukraine might be important in these ways, is number one, the effects of internal party divisions on an issue which I think is largely resolved by the party, not in the particulars, but in the kind of tenor. And here's what I mean by that. For example, the Trump administration on the Epstein files. This is not a high salience issue when it comes to the overall electorate. Agreed on that? Like no one in the election context in 2024, no one said in terms of the polling, right, that their top issue is Epstein. Very few, I would say. Maybe
it matters on the margins in ways that are impossible to quantify, right. And it's more kind of like throw that in the pile of thing that is causing the administration to lose credibility. But it's not like a high salience thing.
And it's causing them to lose credibility, not necessarily with like directly with the voter who is really steep in these issues. But I think an understated but important part of the machinery is like high information people who are your broadcasters, people who are your very enthusiastic people who are going to be organizers. That you're, in other words, an issue that's high salience with high information people, and where the majority of the party is, even though it's not highly ranked on a list of issues, that doesn't mean it couldn't cause internal party strife, which bleeds into actual problems when it comes to the connection between the voter and the politician or the party. And that's what I'm getting at, where I think.
But I think they're making those problems, though. I think they're deliberately making those problems.
Who's they? The lefties?
Yes, I think they're deliberately trying to make it more divisive than it already is, because they think that it benefits them in the long run. They think that they can leverage that issue to purge the party of people that they think have a immoral.
I'm not denying their intention here is definitely to leverage that pain point, right? That's 100% a lot of their aims is to leverage the pain point so as to effectuate change, right? But I view it in a similar context as people who do something like that for Ukraine, right? In the Ukraine context, no one is going to list Ukraine as a top issue. But I would be seriously, I would look twice at a candidate in a primary context who said, like, fuck Ukraine, fuck Europe, whatever. Maybe not necessarily for the fact that it is high salience with the voters directly, but it indicates a mismatch ideologically between the leaders and where the base is. So that's one problem, is that I don't feel like there's a responsiveness to an overwhelming issue. It portends bad things for policy. So something that is low salience among voters might lead to significant policy, which I think might cause problems down the line. And then, like I mentioned, this kind of mismatch between the high information people. If all of a sudden you knew that Kamala Harris was a hawk on Ukraine, by which I mean she's skeptical of Ukraine funding, you would feel a little less enthused going out to like stump for her, probably, right? You can understand that. If she was like, fuck Ukraine, like who cares, let them do whatever, you would feel weird about being the biggest Kamala stand on the debate stage and like having to be like, don't worry about Ukraine, don't worry about NATO. And that would, I think, disenchant you a little bit. And that's all I'm trying to say here, is that there's other forms in which this issue can rear its head that has negative knock-on effects to either your administration or to your popularity, that don't necessarily find themselves in the overall salience of the issue.
Right. I just think that they're intentionally trying to evoke that. I
agree. Yes.
And so, like, so to me, just strategically, and I also think that they present it as a moral imperative as well. So that they think that,
of course they do, yeah,
because the conditions are so bad for people in Gaza that it's morally imperative to center that into discussion. If you don't, that means you're immoral. But I just look at I look at morals and strategy and how they interact politically. I look at that kind of thing very differently. So I think that like you can make a moral argument for being like very strategic and pragmatic about how you call attention to political matters and how you discuss like how you do strategy. So like I think that you have a moral imperative to like optimize your chances of winning and optimize like your wins around the
I have not 10-minute ads.
Country. And,
I think I'll only have time to go over this today.
And that might include like specifically not trying to blow up someone's candidacy in this race over Israel-Palestine if that candidate is like better positioned to win. And so, I think I look at it in a more kind of like holistic sort of way.
No, I think that in terms of what I would like to see, I didn't want to see people constantly disclaiming that they're going to vote for Kamala Harris, even though I don't think I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think it had a huge impact on Kamala Harris's chance of winning the Gaza issue. I'm not even sure this whole like autopsy thing is going to show that was like a but-for cause of her loss or whatever.
Did you take a gander at their
a little bit?
Did you take a gander at their playbook? I just put that shit in Claude and had it spit out a summary. But
oh shit, yeah, no.
I'm reading the entire playbook.
Oh boy. Would you use but for non-sequential things? Is that commonly used? I only ever hear it used in a legal context, but like when you say like this wouldn't have happened but for this particular thing, that makes sense to me for like a sequence of events. But like if we're talking about something where there could be multiplicative or not multiple, I'm sorry, where there are multiple factors at play, I feel like it doesn't make as much sense. So like if you were to say that but for you drinking last night, you wouldn't have drank and drive. That's like makes sense as a but for, right? Except for that thing, this wouldn't have happened. But if you were to take an issue, like look at Hillary Clinton in 2016, right? Would we say that like the Comey thing was a but for? I mean, that election was so close. You could arguably say everything was but for, right? Every single thing.
Like Clinton would have won but for Comey?
Yeah, or but for this, or but for that, or but for this, or that, or this, or that.
Seems like it makes sense.
Well, but I feel like it's kind of meaningless at that. Like if you're saying, if it's like a multiple variable thing,
Sure.
Like let's say like it's like a straw that broke the camel's back kind of argument. Let's say that let's say that you can carry 100 pounds of weight and then there are 99 pounds of weight on you. Or let's say that like there's 50 pounds of weight on you and then 50 people put 1 pound of weight on you at the same time. Like you could say, but for any of those one individuals, you wouldn't have collapsed. But there's like 50 different things. It could have been anything. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Shut the fuck up.
Summary or maybe even the lessons themselves. What I'm trying to say is like, I don't disagree that.
By the way, though, they are 100% convinced that the DNC autopsy found that Gaza cost commonly the election, and they're keeping it secret because they don't want to.
I also think you have to be very careful when you're criticizing the lefties on what they're talking about for like the Israel-Palestine thing. Like when Hutch says like, well, they're trying to make this like a moral thing. You should fight more on the fact part rather than the moral part, because like if we truly did believe that Israel was engaged in this like bloody genocide for no reason other than their embittered hatred of the Palestinian people, I mean, there's a reason why people want to say genocide. It's because this is this is like the worst possible crime that a person could literally ever commit. It's the crime of all crimes. So to say that, like, well, they're focused on the morality of it, it's like, well, it's a fucking genocide. Like, the fuck? Yeah, of course they are. How could you not be? What do you mean? Of course.
It's like your abortion argument a little bit.
Sure, yeah, exactly. Yeah, like if you concede, well, a fetus is a child, it's like, damn, now you're going to make an argument for why you should be able to murder a child? Whoo, good luck. That's a hard one, you know?
Get get out and piss off the donors. Like, that's what they're all
that's one of those
saying
truisms, right?
Yes.
That's one of those truisms where like, I think that is partially bolstered by the fact that they won't release it, and that's what the Pod guy said this also in their most recent, one of their most recent shows, where it's like
that's true.
Yeah,
they gave them ammunition. It caused a Streisand effect. It was just like really stupid to. I mean, there is like there's some room for debate, because like when you look at the Ken Martin quote, actually, you know, the quote's kind of weird. He's like, okay, of course we're going to release it. We're going to release it to our members. And so, okay, were you talking about releasing it to everybody, or are you talking? You know?
It's not convincing. I'll tell you why. But I understand there's potential ambiguity. Someone can read into it. It's not convincing for the following reason. One is how it's understood publicly.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. For the record, I agree with you. I'm not.
How did you feel about Pisco's argument that Israel-Palestine shows an ideological issue similar to how we would see someone not supporting Ukraine as sus, despite it not being really salient? No, I would agree with that 100% too. Again, it comes down to the fact of the matter is what's important here. Like, if there was a candidate running, I don't know if it would be enough to necessarily change how I want to vote for them, but if there was a candidate running and their position was like, honest to God, I support every single thing Israel does. I think that more or less they've been unimpeachable for the past 3 years. Like, I don't really think you can criticize much of their behavior at all. Maybe there were a couple bad apple soldiers, but for the most part, you know, I think it's been pretty basic the past few years. I would look at that person, even if this isn't like an issue of like ultra high salience, I would question, like, if this is truly your perspective on the sequence of events that has unfolded, I feel like that would lead you to other kind of sussy positions morally. How many fucking attacks did I just do? Damn. Yeah, I think that's a fair point.
100%. I'm not saying that you don't. I think the first thing I say is something you agree is like the public understanding of it was different. And at a certain point, public communication is going to necessarily, like, just doing the technically like I might do, right? Actually, the 51 intelligence agencies, former intelligence people who said that the Hunter Biden, that the laptop had the hallmarkings of Russian disinformation, doesn't mean that the people hear that. That's number one. But on the literal meaning too, the members of the DNC are like 400 or so members, right? And if it just is true, if you send out the report to 400 plus members, we're talking state chairs, we're talking certain incumbents of certain offices already, that is effectively making it public. Yep. So it just is. So even if you take it at the most literal, which means the DNC members, that is an effective public release, and we haven't seen that yet. And also,
they haven't sent it out to all the members yet. So yes. You know, yeah. So either which way,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's no way to slice, and that's why Martin knows he's trying to move on from it. Like, if Martin had a good technical, like, actually whatever, he would say it, but he knows that it's inconsistent, no matter which way you slice it.
Yeah, that was
maybe there's a good reason, right? Go for it. Sorry.
I do think there is a good reason. I mean, like, I do think you can make a good argument for that kind of thing being limited to like leadership, because it is just the truth that like what I would expect to be in the autopsy is various errors at the state and like county level when it came to funding and like legit, like all dozens, hundreds of
like the reality here is I view this the same way as I've said this before, the Hunter Biden pardon. I think it was a mistake that Joe Biden said that he wasn't ever going to pardon Hunter Biden. I don't think he should have said that. I think it's done. I think it was just a mistake. I don't think it's justifiable. It's just wrong. He shouldn't have said that. But that doesn't make the pardon itself wrong.
I don't like that he pardoned, but I understand why he did.
He absolutely should have. He should have, 100%.
Yeah, based on the political climate. But I think the true wrongers are the people who gave the president the pardon power.
Sure.
Fucking retards.
Whoa.
Logistical problems that existed all over the country. Which is to say that I would expect in an autopsy like that for there to be a robust data set of all kinds of different variables. And I think it is the case that if you release something like that is that granular, that it does give bad faith actors some ammunition to cherry pick data points and then try to paint a larger narrative, which is divisive at a time when we're already doing like really good and the Republican Party are not doing really good. So, you know, like I do understand that argument. I think the blunder that he made was running on it and then not releasing it, because like I think in chess there's a term blunder, and it's just it's there's like bad moves in chess, but there's like levels to it, and a blunder is just like just a straight up bad move. It's just
blunder, the hyper specific term for chess. I never would have known otherwise.
Obviously bad. It's just like the worst kind of bad moves. This was one of that, because I just don't think he quite understood just how much the DNC and perception of the DNC still continues to be really, really bad as like a relic from the 2016 stuff. And they already have like this right or wrong, you know, to what degree or whatever, they already have this reputation of being very, very much not transparent and very much like deceptive. And he played right into that with this, and he just like gave all of them ammunition against the DNC. So it was a blunder.
Yep.
Wait. Asmongold.
So it's another one about me.
I knew that he looked at Twitter and showed it on stream. I like how I react to Asmongold. Whether or not he sees it just depends on if it shows up in his fucking algorithm. Oh my god, it's actually so pathetic. Jesus Christ.
It's another one about me.
I knew that he looked at Twitter and showed it on stream. It can't be that he has 8 hours of Twitter reacts every single day.
Let me guess. This is going to be another image, another video of Destiny crashing out at me. And there's going to be nothing included in this that's like actually any sort of like real, like he's never gonna like listen, like argue against anything I'm saying. You're just gonna say that I'm an idiot.
I mean, I can argue against literally every single thing you're saying. The problem is there's just oftentimes not much to argue against. It's just you laughing about some ridiculous thing a conservative said. What is he talking about right now? Oh fuck! I always go to the stupid fucking channel.
You can call them. Do you have another family member that could stand in their place?
No, I don't. That's the thing. I was in the middle of moving. I didn't even know that.
Okay, let's see the last thing of substance he talked about on stream.
That's what it was. So it's very annoying to me. It's all right. Like it's my great grandfather. What is this here? Did she say this? Oh my god. My great maternal grandfather was the king of Laos in 1861. And was forced under threat of military bombardment, aka to avoid a massacre of his people, to cede Laos over to British. This is misleading by omission. British intervention in Laos was due to the slave trade. Oh, so it's not like she was like a victim or like, you know, the offspring of like, you know, slave relations or something like that. No, okay. So he literally was selling slaves. All right, well, there we go. Great. Exactly. She's a slave trafficker? Yeah, definitely. And I think that there should be more of an acknowledgement to this. That, like, we didn't go over, like, Europeans and Americans didn't go over to Africa with a lasso and start wrangling up random black people. We didn't do that. We went over there, and other black people sold them to us. They were already slaves to begin with. They were slaves before they even made it to America.
Okay, so, like, okay, I'm sorry, I'll engage with this, but these are just the stupidest fucking arguments, okay? Like, is it true that people in other countries sold as slaves? Yeah, of course, that is true. Like, it's not like we patrolled the plains finding people randomly and then rounded them up. But, like, the implication that Asmongold is giving here is there's, like, a moral equivalence to a more advanced society sailing to another society, looking at those people, looking around and being like, which one of you are going to... Who among you are going to be the slaves, and who among you are going to sell the slaves to us? Like, to say that there's like an equal moral equivalence there is a very morally naive statement. That's a really stupid thing to say. Like, I'm sure there were some Jews that were traitors to Jews in the fucking Holocaust or whatever, but like, does that give them the moral equivalence of a Nazi? Like, probably not. There were a lot of, I think even Kurdish fighters. There were a lot of Muslims, strewn across Syria and Iraq that ended up joining ISIS. But the way that it worked was ISIS basically rolled into your town, knocked on your door and was like, hey, so are you with us? Or are we about to string up and execute every single one of your family members and maybe make a really cool 4K high-def video of us drowning you or setting you on fire in a fucking cage, right? And it's like, well, Jesus Christ. You're not really cooking as much as you think you are when you're like, that some of those people joined ISIS, right? When they came through, right? Well, yeah, of course, but like, Jesus Christ, that's a pretty naive engagement with the subject matter. Or like, that there were actually black people that sold slaves to America. There were black people that sold slaves or to the colonists or whatever people that came from other countries. Well, yeah, but that doesn't exonerate the people that were buying them. And who's to say how influential the back and forth was when another society shows up on your doorstep, especially one with access to more weapons and food and disease and everything else. And it's like, hey, motherfuckers, what you got for us, right? This is just... And all that to say, if you would actually read into these topics, it could be that this statement that Asmongold is making is actually more true than not. It could be that the slave trade was rich and vibrant and white people showed up and they didn't even have the concept of slavery in mind. And the black people are like, oh, let me introduce you to this amazing concept of slavery. And they're like, oh, shit, let's do it, right? That would be really bad that would be an indictment on the moral character of the people going there. It would lessen the indictment on the moral character of the white people that showed up. Or... it could be that the white people showed up. There may have been like a little bit of slavery. Every society's practiced some form of enslavement when it comes to like war and whatnot, not chattel slavery. But maybe white people showed up and then they pushed the idea more of like, we want to buy slaves, figure out who the fuck is going to sell them, or else all you motherfuckers are coming with us, or we're just going to run your shit for you. And, some people inevitably are going to take up that deal. But Asmongold doesn't engage with anything historical here, with any depth of anything. These people make fun of me for reading Wikipedia. Meanwhile, these guys are being educated by single sentences on X community notes, which is also just a popularity contest of who upvotes the note or not. So Yeah, okay. There you go. There's a critical engagement of one piece of information. The first thing that I found on your fucking stream. We could find another one. It's probably going to be equally stupid, but all right.
Hard. So is this everybody else's?
To be fair though, my criticism here is actually irrespective of any position you take. Your mind is being rotted by scrolling down a For You page. That's not good. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong about anything. That's just not a good scenario. Find another one, please. Well, okay.
That's what it was.
Let's go to 3.5 hours or 2 hours. 2.5 hours. Fuck it. Okay, what do we got?
Or anything like that is just really wasting their time. No idea how much AI-generated slop I was looking at. Again, all these people that are doing this, that are posting on Twitter, etc., there's nothing that you can do about it. Iron Mouse literally just envious and worried about herself getting replaced. I'm not saying that. I mean, people can say that if they want. That's not what I think is going on.
He's commenting about something Iron Mouse said about AI content, AI generated stuff, I guess.
But anyway, like, it's funny, the outrage is exclusive to art and gaming. Other industries use AI massively, like telecom, and we can deliver new features for phones each year.
Pretty sure every single person is complaining about AI everywhere for job replacement, but okay.
Exactly. And that's what I think is very interesting, is that the only people that are going out there and crying about this are people that are inside of art and entertainment industries.
This absolutely just depends on the community you're in. I hear so many complaints about the whole concept of vibe coding is a meme that has exploded on the internet, and almost every industry I think is complaining about AI replacing jobs. Arguably, one of the potential hot button topics for the midterms and maybe the next presidential election are where data centers are being built, right? That could be like the topic is that a lot of countries are having issues even with, do we want these massive AI data centers or whatever the fuck else built in our countries? To pretend that it's only people in art that are complaining about this, I think maybe like 5 years ago or something, or not maybe 5 years, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, maybe that's a little bit more accurate, but.
And I think that's very unfair. It's unfair that their job is protected while everybody else's job gets removed. It's totally unfair. Why is it okay that, some other person...
It's also a stupid... Fuck, I hate engaging seriously with... I'm sorry. It's dumb engagement with them because it doesn't make good arguments for anything, right? It's also not necessarily the same. And I'm not necessarily saying artist jobs are more important, but like artists have always been under attack when it comes to work. They're generally underpaid. And also there's like this added thing of like nobody actually takes your job seriously. If you major or if you work professionally in any art field, you have always had at least one, if not a half dozen or more friends come up to you and it's like, oh my God, like you take pictures, right? And it's like, well, I'm a professional photographer that does like corporate events and oh yeah. You take pictures. Can you like take pictures of like our wedding? We'll give you like $50. If you can just have like 3 videos mixed with like good audio, and if you can capture, but like 50, maybe like $100 or whatever, right? And you like taking pictures, you should want to do it, right? Or like, can you draw a picture for me? I want you to draw some things for my website. You like drawing, right? You like to draw pictures, right? Like everybody's had this experience. So of course, understandably, regardless of if the argument is good or bad, the artistic industry is going to be even more sensitive to AI encroaching on their jobs because Jesus, like even in the ordinary world, they're not, before AI, artists are already kind of thrown under the bus.
Person gets replaced, but you aren't allowed to be replaced. It's virtue signaling, exactly. No one's defending graphic designers, yeah. And
what?
Gen AI is different. I don't think Gen AI is different. I feel like why is Gen AI fun? I'll pull a couple people up and I'll listen to some of these arguments, right? Why is Gen AI different?
But don't most people have that experience, at least if you have a job that has utility in daily life? Not really. Sometimes like IT people or software engineers will compare it to like a family asking you a question about like, can you troubleshoot my computer? But to truly make it equivalent, if you work in software, well, no, it does happen sometimes, but the equivalent average ask that an artist gets is like when somebody DMs you and they're like, hey bro, like, can you help me with this? I've got this really cool idea to build this entire social media platform and I need you to do the back end and the entire front end for it. And I'll give you 10% equity in the company because I know how important that is. Like that would be like the equivalent thing.
Like I want you to explain it to me.
Explain what to him? It doesn't, but it's still...
We're going to work through this.
Oh.
How come every time I need an artist to do something on a deadline, their grandmother died or
Probably because you're
They
not
always
paying
have
him
an
enough.
excuse.
Ooh.
Oh, true.
China is trying to put laws to make it illegal to fire and replace employees with AI. Of course. I mean, a lot of everybody is trying to make a rule to stop. First, I want to say I don't give a shit about AI, but I get why people think it's different. But you know that it's not different, right? Because I don't want to have a devil's advocate argument. Like, if you understand that it's not different and that it doesn't really matter, then, like, why even spend the time doing it? But, like, if you really think that, then I'll engage with this. But there's tools and shit that people tend to be okay with. I don't care what people are okay with. I care what makes sense. I know that people have opinions on things. It's come around to getting it from art friends. I don't know what you mean by that.
Okay, whatever. There's pretty obvious. Now you can argue whether the difference is meaningful or not, or should be legislated against or not. But there's obviously a difference between, like, I've made an entire song and I want to use AI to go through and make sure that all of my harmony is, like, harmonically correct. That's a much different thing than, like, I've written a melody and I want to use generative AI to turn it into an entire song. Right? If that's the difference you're talking about. Like, again, we can argue whether or not there's, like, a meaningful difference in terms of how it should be legislated against, or, what's acceptable or not acceptable, but there's some kind of difference there. There must be, right? Assuming that's what you're talking about. Okay, sorry. All right, there are two things.
So is this everybody else's content? They just watch me? I mean, like, really, I'm an incredibly interesting person, and, everybody wants to know and think about me.
It's such it's got to be, or maybe his audience doesn't see it. I feel like it's so weak. Like, you come off as so weak when you say that. Like, why are you reacting to me? Why are you watching me? Why are you reacting to my content? Well, because you're a huge political streamer. Well, I'm sorry, right now the largest political streamer who's incredibly influential. And I think the things you're saying are, in some senses, evil. In most senses, incorrect. So, why,
office and...
But remember also, sorry, just as a quick thing, remember what I've said, like, all of the media establishments right now are meant to be totally insulated. Everybody wants you to live in the world that Asmongold lives in, where you just have a For You page that you scroll and everything is self-reinforcing and to some extent almost like self-referential. Like, you're creating your own memes, you're creating your own historical events to draw from the future to prove the points you're saying. And so, like, don't react to me. Don't be obsessed with me is a way of trying to push somebody out of interfering with the, like, circle jerk that you're trying to create.
Interesting person, and, everybody wants to know and think about me. Office sentence process.
He likes Twitter.
Yeah.
Problem?
Like, this is like the exact type of person who will grow up and get scammed when he's older or whatever. Like, he's such a sucker.
I get scammed? What do you mean? Who got scammed? I didn't get scammed. When did I get scammed?
You're being scammed right now into thinking that you're consuming a balanced diet of news. That's the scam, bro. Fed slop that makes him feel so good.
I like watching things that make me feel good. What's wrong with that? I don't want to watch things that make me... I look at a lot of things that make me mad. I do.
Ooh, that's a very naive engagement with feels good and feels bad, because things that make you mad, when it comes from a righteous anger perspective, is not a thing that makes you feel bad. I don't know if you understand that there's a difference there. He's like consuming news. He thinks he's getting informed. Like, if I'm super pro-Palestinian and somebody shows me a video of Israelis mistreating Palestinians, like, I feel bad, but that's like a righteous anger type of feeling. But if I'm pro-Palestinian and somebody shows me a video of Hamas killing, Israeli soldiers or Israeli civilians, ooh, that makes me feel mad and uncomfortable. I don't like that, right? These are two different types of anger. One is challenging your worldview, and the other is reinforcing it through righteous anger.
Look at a lot of things that make me mad. I do.
He's like consuming news. He thinks he's getting informed. He thinks he's passing this information off to his audience.
Right.
He doesn't know anything about any of the underlying cases. He doesn't know anything
like what?
About the law, about any of these cases. He doesn't know anything about, like, literally, like, not a single actual fact. It's just slop that's being fed to him through the Twitter algo.
So this is the thing. Because I'm looking at Twitter, I'm
not looking at Twitter. Also, I like the minimizing language, right? Why do you beat the shit out of your wife? So because I touched her, now now I'm a bad husband? Just because I one time put my hand on her, I'm a bad husband? It's like, well, no, sir. You broke her ribs. It's not that you look at Twitter. It's that Twitter is the exclusive source of news for you. And it's not even Twitter. It's a custom tailored page to show you all the things that make you feel good. And you've managed to bullshit yourself and your audience into believing that you're digesting news in a way that's giving you a true and comprehensive view of the world.
I'm wrong. Okay. So if it was that easy, wouldn't you be able to just say what it is that's wrong? Then
sure, I gave 2 examples. We can go and watch. We can spend 8 hours on an Asmongold stream and go through fact after fact. I've called him out before, but he doesn't give a fuck. He doesn't address any. He doesn't know how improper the weaponization of the DOJ has been, or he falsely thinks that the Democrats have done things that the Republicans are doing now. We can go through any number of a million different things. It just depends on what he's consuming it for that day.
Yeah, then tell us the facts. Then where is the information that I'm missing out on and I'm not understanding?
Like, I don't understand how he can be so brain broken on this. Like, you wouldn't even know. You wouldn't even know where to begin. You're getting all of your information fed to you through a custom tailored feed that makes you feel good. How would you even know where to begin to get facts that don't reinforce your worldview?
Like, I don't get this.
I know, that's the point. That's the problem. This is like rage pornography for your brain, and he's gooning to it every single.
Well, aren't you doing? That's what you're doing. You're doing that right now.
Fucking day.
Yes.
Holy shit.
This is extremely common.
He thinks that what I'm claiming he's doing is just getting mad. That's like, again, that's such a naive engagement with what I'm saying.
And you see this all the time. This is a very common Reddit strategy.
Reddit strategy. Okay, nice.
The reason why it's a common strategy and why people do that is because it's a way for them to project their intelligence.
I can be the dumbest motherfucker on the planet and make this criticism of you. It's just about not being a sucker.
It's not about actually engaging with the argument in a reasonable way, right? It's not about
what do you even think the argument is?
Trying to, discuss something or, to put forward an idea.
You can't discuss anything. You've literally said you will not have the discussion. Now I'll be better faith than he is, and when he says discussion, he just means talking about the thing. I like that he uses the word discussion, though, as though he's elevating clip versus clip discourse into something that it's definitely not.
Reasonable way, right? It's not about trying to, discuss something or, to put forward an idea. It's trying to assert that you are being the smart person. You are intelligent. You're reasonable. You understand things. The devil's advocates, well, it's not even really devil's advocate because they don't even think that they're wrong.
Right, Asmongold. I don't even know if he's capable of engaging with concepts of I don't want to say epistemology, like where does your information come from? What are your sources of truth? Like, it feels like he's already assumed that everything is the same. You can read studies, you can do independent research, you can be a journalist, you can look at your Twitter feed, and it's all kind of the same. And then we just talk about the facts from there, not realizing that there's like a discussion of like, where do you even get your facts from? I don't even know if he's capable of engaging on that level. I have no idea. His brain is completely fucking fried on this shit. And then he just passes it off to his audience.
True.
Who are all...
It's crazy that I've watched so many Destiny clips complaining about me, but not one of them includes any sort of a reasonable, response to anything that I'm saying. It's all just simply attacking the way that I have my positions or the fact that, I do or I don't do something, where I'm looking at them. It's never actually attacking anything I'm saying.
Well, I mean, you can attack the way that somebody gets their information. That's a perfectly valid way of attacking where challenging the foundation of a person's knowledge. I think it's a fine way to attack where their information comes from. Now, I agree that it should be paired with attacks on the statements they're making, right? Like, it wouldn't be enough. Let's say that Asmongold was giving plenty of fair criticisms of the Democrats or progressives or whatever else. It wouldn't be fair for me to say, well, you just got all your information off of Twitter to never address the arguments themselves, but I can address any fucking argument Asmongold makes. It's interesting that he would claim otherwise when I'm the one who said, we can debate any topic you want, and he's the one who said, I can't, I don't want to debate any. It's like, okay, well, I mean, who's the one who's afraid of the critical confrontation? Don't make me waste my time on this. I'm not going to have time to get to the fucking, these guys' things. Fuck, okay.
So kind of where I'm getting at, yeah, so I'm amenable to the argument that such thing as confidential information that shouldn't be released to the public. The DNC has internal deliberations and everything, and I don't have this kind of ex-ante view that everything that should be done that's deliberated behind closed doors should be released. That's not, I'm someone who...
I like that you have to talk to him through clips.
Yep.
There's
awesome.
problems, even though I agree with ultimate disclosure of the Epstein files, I think that there's been a lot of untalked about costs to this, even the way they're doing it now, which isn't even a full release of the Epstein files. And so I'm not someone who says maximum disclosure at all times is a per se good. And I would even be open to saying, well, okay, let's keep it more limited ex ante. The thing is, we don't live in an ex ante world. We live in a world in which the context is he did in fact make those kinds of statements, which were interpreted by people a certain way.
What is that?
Ex ante means before the model applies, right? Before, from a perspective before the thing that happens, right? Ex ante, that is to say, like before the thing, we could say in a perfect world, we would have set it up such that he didn't make the promise, right? Okay. And so ex ante, you could say, you shouldn't release it, don't give the promise. But the thing is, he already did the thing. He already made the promise, and we live in that world, not the other world. And given that we live in that world, everything that you said just comes online. The thing about the reputation of feeling fearful, reputation of being cagey, right? It's a big reason why not lefties, not just lefties, I should say, rank and file Democrats, regular, it's like blood and I don't want to say blood and soil, like blue Democrats don't disapprove of their party, with like historic disapproval by our own party members of the party leadership and where we're at. And it's not just because of these crazy lefties. In other words, that reputation of fecklessness, of weakness, of being scared, of being cagey, of not being upfront, all of these things magnify. And so, yeah, it's a huge mistake. And at this point, why is this better? Like, why is this news cycle the optimal news cycle? We're seeing the kind of hay that is being made about the lack of the release of the autopsy report. And you have to, just like in the same way of like, well, why would Trump hide the Epstein files? There's got to be something really damaging in there if he's wasting all this political capital and reputational harm to do it. It's the same kind of thing that it leads to negative inferences on the Ken Martin side. And then
I don't think these two things are comparable. I think Ken Martin has a good reason, and he's given a good reason for why you might not want these things released, and it's believable, I think. The Trump Epstein stuff, I mean, one, their party obsessed over it. Now, if Ken Martin had made to the same degree different statements about like, we need this public, we need it, if he'd done this for like a year or whatever, then sure, I think I would be more amenable to that comparison, but I don't think these two things are comparable.
In addition, last thing, and I'll let you respond. I also saw the Pod Save one where they recently say like they are talking to people who say that perhaps one of the reasons they didn't release it is because it's like a shitty report written by his like friend, and they don't want to have to get into like the fact that the report is like,
I don't know. I've seen this conspiracy now that Ken Martin just got his best friend to do it, and his best friend made a shitty report. Now he doesn't want to release it because everybody will know how dumb it was for his friend to work. I don't know, sure, if there's even any reliable sourcing for this other than Pod Save America's Friends.
Functionally
anonymously.
It's a bad report, putting aside it's any kind of like.
Oh, I didn't hear about that. Like they're saying that they know someone who says that it was just like haphazardly done, or just like not a good.
So Favreau and Levitt and who's the not Dan Pfeiffer, the other one. I don't remember his name. Tommy Vitor.
Tommy Vitor, yeah.
Tommy, those three, I think, at least two, at least Tommy, and at least Favreau, perhaps Levitt. They said we talked to people in the know, and they would have access to a lot of these people who say that the reason that Martin is not disclosing it doesn't have to do with Israel, Palestine, doesn't have to do with anything in particular, other than the report was really, really badly done, and essentially it was like a fucked up process, and it was just like a bad report, embarrassing report that isn't like worth publishing. If that's the case, I'm like, Jesus Christ! Like if that's the reason, that's like just a bad. Like just do the report right then, right? Just do it correctly. But yeah, that's and it's just gonna have a life of its own. So yeah, I think that is a big mistake.
Well, let's talk about Taylor Lorenz. Let's talk about that pod. When you were interjecting, was your goal to? Here was my sense of things. Tell me if I'm wrong. I think there were a couple things going on there, maybe a few. I think the first thing that popped into my mind was that I suspected that you might have been wary of the optics of a pylon, and so you saw me and Soypil kind of bouncing off each other, and then you didn't want the optics to be like
the main reason, but it's something I thought about. Yeah,
I felt like maybe that was partly motivating you, but also there was also it did take. I think. Well, you tell me. I mean, were you trying to? Did you meaningfully disagree with the points that I was making, or did you think that the arguments could have been sharper?
Some of them.
Or did you think that like the arguments could have been sharper, and that's what motivated you to jump in when you did?
I guess that's an important distinction to make in terms of disagreement. It depends on which. I disagree, perhaps, and maybe you didn't mean it, but as I was hearing it, what you said about the disclosure. So I disagree with that. So anytime I disagreed, I felt that I wanted to raise it. So that was a sufficient condition for me to.
Which part about the disclosure? Which part?
That the article doesn't in fact, that it's untrue. The statement that it was untrue, that the contract prohibited disclosure of the relationship. That statement, that whole exchange. And regardless of whether it's true or not, my perception was that there was a factual error there. So if I perceived a material factual error, I almost certainly was going to like step in at some point, at least as I heard it. So that was enough. I don't know on the centrist point whether I quote unquote disagree with you. On that point, I felt that we were spinning our wheels in something that was not helpful for the discussion and therefore needed to be clarified. And that is just a very specific point, not on the claim that you made. And I think you and Soypal made it quite well, that centrist is used as a pejorative. I agree with that. And I agree that like when you pulled up all of those instances where she uses centrist, that's at least that's good evidence, right? That this is being used as a pejorative. What I disagreed with was substantially disagreeing on the fact of the matter regarding Olivia Juliana being a centrist itself. the reason I disagree with that is because obviously the term centrist is capable of multiple reasonable interpretations of what it means. It's not like one single objective definition of the word centrist. And so I would sooner have, and I thought it would have been better if we just get clarity and insight on Taylor's term centrist. What do you mean? What did you mean, Taylor, when you wrote centrist, right?
Pisco is exactly correct in what he's saying, but he's acting like he didn't listen at all to the conversation. That's true. There's not one objective meaning to the word centrist, but Taylor Lorenz clearly uses it in a heavily negatively loaded manner. And I think they established that. But okay.
And do you agree that that is a proper label? And so why? Why is it a proper label? And that actually is effective, I think, for you. If you're able to say, well, all I mean by centrist, if Taylor says all I mean by centrist is aligned with the Democratic Party, that's additional evidence that her calling it out is not a good explanation. It's not a good explanation in the article to be like, well, I just wanted to make sure the reader knew that Olivia Giuliano was aligned with the Democratic Party. That's all kind of presupposed in the fact that they're a part of course in the first place. And so it lends more plausibility to the argument that it's being used as an indicator, right? As a framing device. And so rather than trying to to bog you down, I was trying to do the opposite. I was trying to be like, why are we talking about whether it's true or not, whether she's a centrist? Let's just get clarity on what Taylor meant and then go to the thing that matters, which is the framing.
Let's zoom out a little bit. I want to go back to the Olivia thing, but I want to ask you, because I went in there, I kind of went back and forth about like what I wanted, what my goals were with the conversation with her, and I had like 4 different outlines of like lines of questioning, and it changed like right up into like the last minute. But what do you think I was trying to uncover and expose in that conversation, just like at a macro level?
That the article takes a ideological stand against a certain group of people and portrays them as villains in this battle for the soul of the Democratic Party, and that the people who are the good guys in the story are the non-centrist, non-Hasan types. I thought that you're trying to make the claim this isn't just a factual article, it's a polemic. That's, I think, the point that you were trying to raise.
Yeah. So that's why I asked her the first question, what is the crux of your article? Because when I was doing...
Polemic is a strong, aggressive written or spoken attack on someone else's opinions, beliefs, or ideologies, often intended to incite controversy. So that's a fancy way of saying hit piece, basically, I think, kind of.
Yeah.
In the research for the debate, I watched a ton of her podcast appearances, and unsurprisingly, including the conversation she had with you, and unsurprisingly, she framed the article very differently depending on who she was talking to. So when she was in explicitly leftist spaces, it was about this. What did you say? What is the word polemic? What does that mean?
It's like an argumentative article that is trying to. It's usually like castigating or taking a stand, fiery against a particular view. Right. So it's like opinionated.
A speech or...
I think when somebody says polemic, it's more like Taylor Lorenz doesn't want to be reviewed or doesn't want to be viewed as writing polemic pieces. She wants to be viewed as writing kind of like disconnected, factual pieces, or not disconnected. There's a word I'm looking for, like cold, detached. Like, oh, I'm just presenting the facts. I think she even said as much in the conversation that these guys had. Whereas polemic is like, I hate these motherfuckers, and I'm going to write a piece about how I hate these motherfuckers. You know, like I would say that, like the piece that Dan wrote for the whatever the fuck that website is, the
FP.
Free Press or whatever, is like somewhere between like a polemic and a and just like a factual thing. Like it clearly has like a slant. It's attacking a certain ideology. You know, not like inflammatory, but I think it was super fair to call Taylor Lorenz. She very clearly has good guys, and she very clearly has bad guys, and she's very clearly presenting all the facts to make you hate the bad guys. Like that's very, very, very clear.
Castigating or taking a stand, fiery against a particular view. Right. So it's like opinionated.
A speech or a piece of writing expressing a strongly critical attack on a controversial opinion about someone or something. Okay, yes, so that's good. I'm gonna start using that word. So yes, I do think that she was pushing a polemic in that article. Did I use that right? Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And by the way, I agree with that.
Okay.
Okay.
So, and I thought what was especially revealing was for example, when she was talking with you, it was about disclosure. You guys, you focused on the disclosure part. You didn't really get much into the stuff that I was talking about. And in other spaces that she went to, center left spaces, she kept on emphasizing, nowhere in my article did I say anything about Israel. That we're not. I can't tell that nothing in our reporting revealed that this was about ideology. It was just. But then when she would go into, and especially on her YouTube video that she put out the day of the article, it was all about that polemic. It was all about like, they didn't even approach Hasan Piker because he's so virtuous that why would they? Because this is like a corrupt thing. Which I'm also interested, before we even get like just a side detour, I think what she's doing is like very tricky for her because I think she's trying to be like a hybrid influencer / journalist. But if you write a piece of reporting I don't know. I feel like it's important that you.
I think she is both. I think she wears different hats at different times, and I agree that's
Actually, that might be true. She's not doing polemic. She's doing leftist perspective journalism, but wants to be seen as doing straight reportage. Maybe that would be more accurate, I guess, because technically, she's not really attacking, not through words like an ideology or whatever else, but she wants the presentation of facts and the casting of good and bad people to be seen as that way. That might be more accurate, actually.
sometimes, and that's ironically one of the questions I asked was like, how do you separate these two different roles, and what do you see as them? And she references this distinction when she's like, one of the problems here is that they're labeling themselves a journalist, and so I agree, this two different role thing sometimes will cause issues. Unfortunately, like it just is the case that even a lot of like articles that claim to be objective, whatever, even just choosing what to edit, choosing what to highlight, all these editorial decisions are in some sense normative. Like the New York Times, when it construes a given phenomena a given way with a certain terminology, there is some normative aspects to it. I think what most people are trying to get at, though, is that like the journalistic process, when you wear a journalistic hat, it implies some level of standard of procedure governing you. And so, yeah, and I do agree that there's oftentimes it's unclear which hat is being worn in which conversation, and it can lead to big problems for Taylor. As I question
the ethics of it, because you know it is normal for journalists when they write some big piece to go on like a media tour to talk about their reporting, but what you don't normally see are journalists that are expanding on their reporting in ways. So like, for example, she had this larger commentary, obviously with her tweet, which I thought was really damning, when she said the day that it was posted, of the 90 influencers we saw, they were mostly centrist, pro-DNC / pro-Israel.
Yeah, that was the most brutal part of the whole thing. I think was the lack of any methodology there, and you were able to highlight that.
But you didn't. But she didn't add that in her article because like she couldn't substantiate that, right? So like, to me, it feels like there's a big ethical question here about like, you didn't have the goods to like nail them down in the article that this thing was going on, but then you go over to your social media feed and you like kind of supplement your reporting with things that were not established. And to me, that's
and
like,
aren't just opinions; they're statements of fact, right? There's some sort of factual allegation there that would seem to be like, well, some kind of addendum or some kind of additional inference that maybe isn't.
We are officially paying back the corporations for all the tariffs they had to pay. Thank God. Wait, is the government actually? Fuck. I bet Brad $20 said that wasn't going to happen. $40 actually. I'm fucked.
In the article, but might carry the imprimatur of Wired in a way that people should read into.
Right.
Now, she disclaims that, right? She says the article stands for itself. In a way, it does. I kind of buy that, not every tweet should be read into every article, and they don't incorporate themselves by reference, but it's something that you should call them on in terms of, well, what can you actually show? At a bare minimum, I think it helps. I
don't think you can separate the two. Like, I don't. So she puts her article out, but then she adds all this.
But it's something that you should call them on in terms of, well, what can you actually show? At a bare minimum, I think it helps.
I don't think you can separate the two. Like, I don't. So she puts her article out, but then she adds all this extra commentary on her social media feed. To me, that it's like, well, okay, well, if you're adding this as an addendum in your own commentary, then I'm going to treat it like an addendum. I'm going to treat it like it's in the writing, because
I think you should treat it as a factual statement for sure, and it bears on her credibility. It bears on how we should interpret her article for sure, if these are her views. And certainly when it comes to the framing argument, I think it's highly relevant there. All I'm just saying is I don't think necessarily a tweet that is giving some opinion that relates topically to a factual article is being incorporated by reference. That is just a way of me saying that like there's additional inferential steps that I think are required to draw that connection, which I think you guys were able to do on the framing issue specifically. And again, calling out on the methodology to even make that assertion as a tweet, right? It bears on the article insofar as it bears on her credibility and her bias, and it stands on its own as an unjustified statement regarding the topic of the article.
So what did you mean when you were pressing me on? You jumped in at various points, and the thing that stuck out to me was when you pressed me on, would Biden call himself a centrist? What was the point of that interjection?
Yes. So the point of that interjection was to bring to your mind and to all of our minds that there is no like one true objective meaning of the term centrist. And so Biden's centrist, calling himself a centrist, is another man's most progressive president of all time. And what's me bringing that up, like Biden called himself a centrist. Would you say he's not a centrist? If someone's a centrist, would you disclaim that out? It all depends on like what is being meant by the statement. And so me bringing up Biden calls himself a centrist, wouldn't you consider Biden a centrist? Is to indicate that like whether the statement is true or not depends on in what sense you mean centrist. And I'll give you at least 3 plausible interpretations.
I don't understand. Like everything Pisco is saying is true, but it was already done. Like this would be like me trying to give advice. Like I'm like an Olympic athlete for some reason comes to me like, okay, well, I lost my last event. Like, tell me what you think I should do. And like the first thing I'm like, well, first of all, if you want to compete in the Olympics, you got to be training a lot. Okay. You need to be training a lot. You got to make sure that your diet is good. You got to make sure that you're hitting the gym, that you're training whatever routine or whatever the fuck you're doing. And it's like, yeah, no shit. Obviously. Yeah. We're like, this is already done. Right. It's like, okay, well, what else? It's like, well, you got to make sure that like the rules of the event that you're in. You can't go and do a random thing. And it's like, yeah, like everything Pisco's saying is true, but they covered all this ground. Like, of course, but like, I think Like, you could shortcut all of this by asking Hutch, when Tim Pool calls himself a centrist, do you think he means the same thing there? And he's trying to do the same thing as when Taylor Lorenz calls a Democrat a centrist? Like, no, of course not. But we don't need this explanation. We all know this. And I think that was painfully obvious in that chat that everybody knew that. We all knew that.
Of centrists that are not just like fanciful, they're out there, right? There's a centrist in the sense that you mean, which I agree is a plausible centrist. That's the Joe Manchin types, right? There's centrist in some approximate sense of the country, centrist. There's centrist in the sense of internal, not just country, internal democratic divisions. So the centrist Schumer versus the non-centrist AOC Bernie wing of the party. That's looking at internal party divisions. And it wouldn't be accurate to say that Schumer is a centrist the way Manchin is a centrist, right? Because Schumer is, of course, not a centrist in the way that Manchin is a centrist. And then there's a centrist in the sense of political ideology, in which case it would be accurate to say that Schumer, Manchin, you, and me are all centrist in the overall scheme of political ideologies, where we have like far left Marxists and far right and anarcho-capitalists. So those are three plausible senses in which centrist can be used differently.
I think in a vacuum and assuming good faith, that is an important thing to unpack. Like, I think that's like a really fascinating question to me in the modern era, as far as like, what do these terms mean? Like, what does leftist mean? What does liberal mean? What is, it's become so squishy these days that I almost think that these terms do more harm than good. And so I don't know. It's just, so anyway, but that's like a whole separate conversation.
All I'm trying to say is, like, I think the cleaner, what I was trying to press for is just to ask her in what sense she's using centrist, because there's no objectively correct definition of centrist.
But here's the thing, though.
Yeah, of course. But that's why Hutch was using examples of what he thought she meant. Like, I feel like they covered all this ground.
You're using it, yeah.
But so the question itself, like your interjection, it presupposes good faith on the part of Taylor Lorenz. Well, I think it does, because the point of my line of questioning, and Soypo picked up on it, was I don't think that she was using that word in good faith. I think she.
Do you think Pisco's being good faith here?
I can't tell something. It's very hard. I don't know. I feel like I've called him bad faith in the past. It's hard to ascribe. I don't know, bro. I'm just gonna. I don't know. I don't understand.
You're not sure.
Agree with you on that.
Positive that she was using it as a pejorative, and the whole point of like pressing her on like, well, how did you come to that conclusion? And then it just laid bare that, number one, she wasn't even prepared to answer like what a centrist is. I mean, that's pretty notable. And then also, like the fact that it applied to Juliana, it was just like, I think it's pretty silly when you look at her.
Well, no, there are some senses in which she would be a centrist.
Well, sure, but I understand that. Sure, I take your point. But at that point in the conversation, I think in my opinion, I had already kind of exposed that she was using the term in a bad faith way. And so when you did that and interjected the way that you did, I felt like it gave her a lifeline, because now it's like, now I'm fighting you on the subjective nature of it, and we're moving away from the fact that she clearly used that label in a malicious way. I mean, it's a subtle thing. You have to be kind of online, and you have to kind of work.
That's the conclusion, right?
Versed in online politics, but I think it was pretty obvious at that point that she got her caught with her hand in the cookie jar. And so when you did that, I was like, well,
dispute. No. So my interjection does not presuppose good faith, and I'll tell you why. I actually think it furthers your argument, if I'm being honest with you. But the first thing to note here is that the term and moniker centrist, whether or not she's using that as a pejorative, that's the conclusion we're trying to demonstrate, right? And we're trying to demonstrate it, presumably, not just the people who already agree with us, but the people who are objective and neutral, people who are first-time watchers of this conversation who don't know anything about it. And so it's the conclusion we're trying to demonstrate, right, is that she's using this term in a bad faith way. And so we can't presuppose bad faith because that's just begging the question. It's circular, right?
No, that's why I went through like a line of questioning. Like I kind of guided her there. And what I'm saying, Pisco, is I think we were already there. Like it was already established.
It also shows that through the article, no?
Pisco's criticism
not
here.
Through the article, but
Pisco's
through,
criticism
like,
makes absolutely no sense. He's mixing up Hutch's motivation with the argument he's presenting to the audience. Hutch is absolutely allowed to come into this conversation presupposing bad faith. It's up to Hutch to make the argument to the audience, though. But that's like obvious. I don't know what the point of Pisco's comments were there. I
didn't need to sharpen the argument more. It was just obvious to anyone watching that it was a joke what she was saying. A centrist is pro-Democrat? What? Excuse me? Like, and then she also like kind of hung herself a little bit with her words, because she was claiming like, oh, that's what I called her in the past. And then we find a quote from her, 2 years before the article calling Juliana progressive. And so it's just,
Again, that's presupposing that progressive and centrist are counterposed, that they're in contradiction with each other. But that's, again, presupposing a meaning of the term centrist. And what I'm trying to, I'm not at all pinging you for going down this line. I'm not. I really am not. There's a very specific sense in which I'm critical and exhausted by that line of question. It's disputing the actual, in fact, trueness of whether Olivia Giuliani is, in fact, a centrist. But the reason why what I'm saying here doesn't presuppose good faith on Taylor Lorenz's part is you can just ask her, and we can just say, well, in what sense do you mean centrist? And a question doesn't presuppose good faith. So that question is.
Well, No, because if you think the person is bad faith, then how can you just simply ask them the question? You'd have to demonstrate it through other means, especially if the whole point of what Hutch is saying is that Taylor Lorenz is hiding behind these terms or using them to attack somebody without being super obvious about it. Right?
Well, you just look at her entire body of work,
sure, or recent
and then
examples
bring that
of
up
it,
like
or-
Hutch has been doing.
Sure, yeah.
I don't understand what Pisco's doing.
And
here.
when you ask her, and she says something like, "Well, I just mean Democrat aligned,"
But we had at that point.
furthers your point.
We already had asked her.
Okay, but no, but I heard, and maybe I'm remembering wrong, that there was we were actually disputing whether she was like lying about whether Olivia Giuliani was a centrist and like disputing the factual accuracy of that claim. And that's what I'm saying I think is a waste of time. What we should do, I think, is use that definition that she's provided, Democrat aligned, which, by the way, to me, is not an implausible definition that someone could mean when it comes to centrists. People use it that way.
Hang on.
To refer.
But
That's
who
retarded.
uses it that way?
I mean, like, it's true, but like in the dumbest way possible. Like, could you mean centrist to mean Democrat aligned? Sure. But the only people who use centrist to mean Democrat aligned are people who are weaponizing the term and assigning it a high level of normative negativity. They're trying to make that a bad word. So, like, it's true, but not, like, you're missing the point, I think.
I mean, Hasan Piker technically is Democratic Party aligned, right?
Well, I think that shows the problem in her usage there and makes it implausible, right? That point is a great point that demonstrates why what I'm offering here furthers the argument of bad faith. Why? Because what you just observed, that if what you mean by centrist is aligned with the Democratic Party, then that would mean that you're not actually contrasting Hasan versus Olivia Giuliani. And so it's implausible that this is being used as one of those indicators, in which case it furthers
Right, no, but
evidence
Pisco,
she's using it as an...
Right, but Pisco,
yeah.
I'm saying from my view, internally, I felt like we had already like established that. Like we were past that point. Like I feel like I had established that she had an incoherent, inconsistent definition of centrist that made no sense. And I also think that
then Olivia Giuliani is a centrist on that view. If you think it's incoherent, then there's no use disputing whether she is, because she is on that view.
Explain, what is that?
You haven't done it.
Wait, what?
So if you have shown that she's just using it as an indicator of to be bad faith, then what's the point? If you've already shown that, in other words, you've proven that conclusion, that's what you just said right then. What's the point in disputing the accuracy of whether she is or not? At that point, you've already made the case.
That's a part of it to me. And I guess maybe we're getting hung up here because I don't quite agree with you. I don't think that like when we think of the term centrist colloquially, especially if she's the one that's saying that this article is written from a politically neutral point of view. Like I have opinions, but they weren't present in my article. You know, she was presenting this as like neutral journalism. And so when I think of neutral journalism in language, I'm thinking of colloquial use. So it's true that like if you go into leftist spaces, they feel very comfortable calling Olivia Giuliani a centrist, and that's just a truism to them, right? But colloquially, if her article was not specifically catered to appeal to that group, that group of like people, then there is no good faith reading that Olivia Giuliani
Right,
is a
you're
centrist.
assuming that there's like a correct definition here about what a centrist is. That's precisely what I'm saying.
Colloquially, yes,
Well,
I am.
I don't agree with that. Like, and I think that's what the Biden example shows. It's like if someone said Biden's a centrist, right? Would you be like, you're wrong?
Well, there's nuance because
Like the correct usage of a word, if there was ever to be a correct usage of a word, it is whatever communicates in my mind an idea that I have to whoever's listening to me. Like that's at the end of the day, that's all language is. So if you're using a word that's dictionary correct, but nobody understands what you mean, well, I mean, like it wasn't an effective utilization of the word. Or if you're using a term or a slang term or something else, and it's not, nobody really understands it, well, it's not, I mean, it's hard to argue correctness of a term. If you're using a term with different meanings, and everybody's interpreting that differently than you're intending it to, it seems to me that you'd never consider that like a successful deployment of that word. That would be my assumption. I shouldn't say that would be my assumption. I shouldn't hedge that. That's what we mean when we say, like, are you using language correctly or effectively?
I would say that he
That's what I'm saying. This context is required.
Well, there's more nuance for him because he's a politician, though. So, like, I would say that he ran more.
Well, Hutch is getting. There's not more nuance because he's a politician. Also, it depends on who makes the statement, right?
Centrist-y in 2020, but even then, like his 2020 platform was pretty decently progressive when it came to policy. And then he governed.
So what do you mean by centrist?
He governed even more progressive than he ran on, but he was kind of giving off the aesthetic. He was
So what do you mean by
facade.
centrist?
Like,
and is it indexed differently to politicians versus commentators?
I think so. Yeah,
Okay,
I think so. Yeah.
So
Not
give me a sense of
necessarily.
centrist, which actually, so your sense of centrist that you're going to give me, which is the colloquial one, give me that sense of centrist, and then also make sure that whatever sense you're giving to me does index as between these two different groups. That is to say, commentators and politicians.
I mean, I would say centrism, like centrist would be like more or less synonymous with moderate. It could mean someone that has a decently balanced policy preference set. So maybe they're super pro-gun and they're super hawkish on foreign policy, but they believe in single payer and like I think of like Jared Polis is like a really good example of someone like this, or someone who is like positioned like instead of like a $15 an hour minimum wage, they're there for a $12 minimum. Yeah, I do think that the term centrist and moderate are very closely related.
Right, but like those are referential terms, right? Like, so moderate presupposes like some orthodoxy, presupposes some political context that we exist in, and really like in the context of any kind of discussion, it could mean completely different things. So,
Yes.
I mean, I don't quibble that much. With,
I just don't think colloquially
using it synonymously with moderate.
I don't think colloquially people understand the word centrist to be someone like Olivia Giuliani, who is like a explicit partisan Democrat who is like pushing her main priorities are like standard Gen Z progressive issues like LGBTQ plus and abortion rights and climate and stuff. Like that is not what any reasonable person would identify as a centrist from a neutral label.
In any context?
Certainly, but remember, Pisco, like Taylor Lorenz's assertion was that her article was written without like personal bias or opinion interjected. She was saying that it was not motivated by ideology. That was her framing. And so like under that,
The more common terms are moderate, mainstream, or party line. Centrist is just wacky. Well, centrist is the slur version of moderate. That's really what it is, I think, right? Moderate, I don't think they might use the term moderate sometimes, but generally speaking, I don't think Hasan or Taylor would be the type of people to use the term moderate, because that's like a friendly framing of a moderate voter. They would use centrist, and it would be understood to mean that this person is a fucking loser with no political values, basically.
framing, if it's neutral reporting, if we're not saying, well, it's all, there's degrees, and if you go into a leftist, that to them, Giuliana's a leftist. Well, okay, but she's explicitly saying she did not write the article from the perspective of a leftist, right?
If I were to read a neutral and not biased article, assumedly, right, which labeled Biden a centrist, I wouldn't look twice at it. Or Obama as a centrist. I would understand probably what's being talked about there is with respect to internal divisions within the Democratic Party. So when they refer to Obama,
I wouldn't. Is centrist like a mainstream political word? Like, have I ever seen the term like centrist on the New York Times? I can't think of it off the top of my head. I feel like you would see moderate more likely, but I could be wrong with that. I don't know.
I feel like
centrist
centrist is used
Democrat,
by people, not
yeah.
news organizations. From
almost certainly referring to him in the context of the Democratic Party overall, and contrasting him to people like Bernie Sanders or something. I would not look twice at that from an assumedly objective news reporter. You understand that? So like, I don't look twice at as people in the news media referring to Obama or Biden as centrist, because in that context, I understand probably what they're getting at is to contrast
in an op-ed maybe, but I think I would actually, like, if it was like a WAPO or like a Reuters article written about Obama or in the context of like campaigning or whatever, and they called him a centrist, I think I would think twice about that. I think I would be like, that's interesting phrasing, but if it's like an op-ed from some left-wing writer for WAPO, then that's a different situation, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that so I agree they're different situations, but we're referring to some kind of like colloquial sense of the term centrist. And I think that whatever colloquial sense that we're applying here could plausibly apply to Obama, right? And it could plausibly apply to Biden. And now you're saying treat them differently because they're politicians.
Plausibly, but okay. Fuck. I have a show that I'm doing in 3 minutes, so I have to go for this. We'll finish maybe this tomorrow. How long does this go on for? Holy shit. 2 hours. All right. I'll let you guys be careful. Everybody tell Hamster Hockey you love them.